Hello, this is the August video chat. In some of these past ones, I've been kind of merging the themes in two separate videos. This one, I'm just gonna have all the Stop Killing Games campaign stuff at the front, or try to, and then just have random questions after that. For plans on my own channel, I'm gonna keep doing campaign stuff, though it's winding down a lot. On my end, it's mostly just emails and interview type stuff now. So this is going to be unpopular, but I'm going to take a break for a few days. I'll keep that stuff going, but besides that, I'm just going to take a break for a few days because I've been going, except for some brief time off for part of the day in July, I think, I've been going at it solid with just everything for months, and I'm going crazy. So I'll resume the regular videos after that, but I don't know how much time I need to just be less crazy. Because, like, right now I'm just not great with that. Like yesterday was, like, the first kind of, like, half day off I've had, and I don't know, months. So, okay, so, yeah, a couple of announcements for the Stop Killing Games stuff. In Australia, we did get a response back on the petition. It's pretty similar to the EU one, although this response illustrates so clearly what we've been dealing with on every level. Here, I'll put a link in the chat here so you can. There are a couple parts I wanted to read of it. Take a second for it to come up. But it's like, yeah, okay. So the parts I wanted to focus on, let's see. For digital products such as video games, consumers often purchase a license to use the product and do not have direct ownership over that product. That means that consumer rights in relation to digital products are primarily governed by the terms and conditions set by the business in the associated license agreement. Okay, so that's kind of bad because it says you look and do whatever you want. But then it says terms and conditions in the licensing agreements are subject to statutory protections in the Australian consumer law. So that's good because that means that overrides the end user license agreement. And it talks about some stuff, but the one to focus on is, and from including unfair terms in their licensing agreements where these are standard form contracts, like they are. A standard form contract is prepared by one party to a contract with the other party having little or no opportunity to negotiate terms. That is 100% games. Terms are unfair if they cause a significant imbalance in the rights and obligations of the parties under the contract. Yeah, they're circumventing all goods and services laws. Are not reasonably necessary to protect the legitimate interest of the party who get an advantage from the term. Yeah, they do. They can well, okay, would cause financial or other harm to the other party if enforced. Well, yes, that does do that to consumers. And like the big terms we tend to go off of for these kinds of situations are that they can change the terms at any time. This is real common in game EULAs. That they can end the game to terminate the contract at any time. You're given no notice like how long that's going to be at the point of sale, so when you buy it, you have no idea how long it's going to last. And like in the case of the crew, you're required to destroy all copies of the game that you have. So this very clearly falls under unfair terms and conditions, I think. But then going back again, yeah, and then at the bottom they say, the ACL also creates a basic set of guarantees for consumers who purchase goods or services, including digital products such as video games. But they just said the EULA can circumvent that. So it's like they just don't want to give a straight answer on this. Anyway, let's see. These are intended to ensure consumers receive the goods or services they have paid for. Which, again, so it's in question. Well, did you pay for that? Well, the EULA says no, but then the EULA is unfair. So it's like, to me, this says there's another opening. But what this really says is it is a damn good thing we had the crew shut down to act on. because we have sent all the complaints to the ACCC, and I've paid for the law firm to escalate that, and it looks like I needed that because, or we needed that. I sent this page to the law firm so they could kind of check on it, and they sent I've looked it over. I'll make it public later if they say that's okay. I mean, I probably can, but I just want to make sure that won't screw up anything. They sent a damn good complaint to the ACCC. They had like over 40 points that they were they basically cover every single argument you can make against this practice from a legal perspective or a consumer rights perspective. And I got a reply from them just a couple days ago, and this is a direct quote. "We have received word from the ACCC that our submission has been escalated to the ACCC's Info Center management team for further consideration and response." So that means it has escalated at the Consumer Protection Agency. So that's kind of the best we can hope for a strategy in Australia. So I'm considering this kind of mission accomplished on our end. Now, of course, we hope that this keeps going and they do something about it. But if they're consumer agents, I mean, I guess where do we go from a petition like that? Because they're saying, like, okay, they can do what they want, but that doesn't override statutory rights. And then unfair contracts really sound like almost all game EULAs. So I would think the ACCC, so we'll see. Oh, somebody says, I paid the law firm. I haven't gotten the bill yet, but someone else has agreed to pick up the tab. That's from a few months back, torn.com. They're covering me for advertising them back a few months back, and then I'll use that money to cover the fees once I get the bill for it. So they gave me an estimate, though, like low four figures. But yeah, no, it sounds like that was needed, though, because the vibe I'm getting is all the complaints on the crew might have been just dismissed without that law firm escalating it. Thankfully, that's not the case in Germany and France. I guess the other announcement is the UK. We've got a little more information. Petitions are going to resume in September, and the Competition and Markets Authority they're going to get more authority. I was told third quarter this year, so not yet. So we're still in kind of a holding pattern on the UK, but everything else is kind of underway for now. There might be more steps in France later. We'll see. But okay, so that's really it for announcements on the game campaign. Going to be a lot of waiting at this point, which is fine. That's why I finally have free time, is I don't have to be actively doing everything at every stage. I guess, yeah, still get signatures for the Citizens Initiative, though that continues to be a long shot. But although not if we get the signatures. The signatures part is the long shot. I think we have a very good shot if we do get the signatures, but still have 11 months on that. Okay, so we had several questions submitted that were about Stop Killing Games, so I'll try my best to just do those up front, and then we'll just go to just the regular random stuff. Okay, this one. When it comes to Stop Killing Games, can we legally purchase ads to help the campaign in the EU like Americans? Or are there laws against the campaign receiving non-EU funds? Well, right now it's not set up to receive funds. I mean, if you did that independently, I don't see how that would be a problem, because we're not specifically asking you to, and you're volunteering to. However, if you are doing something like that, you should be clear what the rules are on, like, political advertisements. Maybe it's possible this might not even count depending on where it is, but it seems like it could. I mean, it's not like we're endorsing a candidate or a party or anything like that, but we are advocating for an initiative. But yeah, I mean, check the laws wherever you wanted to do that. I mean, that's the thing about this campaign. It's kind of anarchic, where you can kind of go off and promote it how you want. I mean, it's, we're not really a central authority on it. I'm just trying to push it the best I can. And yeah, somebody had a comment under that. Ross is a good strategist for attacking at all angles, but less so elevator pitches. Yes, that is correct. I am not the master of publicity and marketing. So this is why I said a while back, I don't think I'm the ideal person for this. Although based on how it's turned out, I would give myself a solid B rating. There's a couple things that could have gone better, but overall, it's a solid B plus in that range. Yeah, I guess if we get over 1 million signatures, I could bump it up to A rating. But like the Brazil efforts have probably fallen through, so that kind of was a hit against us. The Australian stuff we kind of stumbled, but that answer makes it sound like none of that mattered. So that worked out anyway. The Australian petition we kind of stumbled, but yeah, and I guess like the other thing we could have done more of is like more direct petitions and maybe like Portugal, Germany, and France, and maybe some other countries, but it's hard to say how effective those would be. Like the common theme in these petitions seems to be like, oh, well, the game companies have a point, but you have a very strong legal point. But we're not going to do anything about it. So thanks for writing. That kind of seems to be like the overarching theme of these petition responses. Just like, it's like we really needed a shutdown in order to get a clear answer. Thankfully, the crew was, again, like a solid B candidate. It almost had to be a game from Ubisoft because they're a major company in Europe doing this practice. So, let's see. Oh, somebody's asking if there's something new with the German and French consumer protection agencies. Nothing new. Just we know they are receiving top tier attention. So this is. To give an analogy, it's not the same, but this would be like if it went to the Supreme Court, sort of, except within the consumer agency. So yeah, this would be like if it was in the FTC, this went to like the head of the FTC to examine this matter. So they give like a very carefully examined reply, which is kind of the best we can hope for. Although in France, we might even have a fallback option if that doesn't go well. So. But yeah, both in France and Germany, it's receiving top tier attention. So, but how long that takes, your guess is as good as mine. We could have an answer tomorrow. We could have an answer 6 months from now, or I have no idea. So, let's see. Okay, how big do you think the chances of the EU overreaching with this law are in a good way? In other words, this spreads to like other software or digital goods and that sort of thing. I have no idea. I would give it like a 30% chance. So I'd say probably not, because they probably don't want to take on any additional work if they don't have to. And we're keeping it limited to games specifically because we don't want more opposition on this. But it's not impossible. I mean, that's the thing. A lot of this is in the government bodies now. So it's out of our hands. Really, a lot of this. So it's not going to be our decision. But yeah, it's not impossible, but that's not what we're pushing specifically. Not because we're not for it, but because, we have nothing right now in terms of protections. I would so like to have something for protections, so I've been taking a very narrow view on this to try to maximize our odds. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Are you happy with the progress of the petition? Well, I mean, I don't know. I'll put it like this. At the rate the petition is going, if it holds this rate, then then this is in the bag and we've got this. So in which case, yes, I'm very happy with it. However, it could drop next week and then be below the level we need and never recover. That's the thing. It's like, I have no idea. I will say, I think I've given this about my best effort as I know how to for trying to promote this. Like if I was trying to get a video with like a bunch of views, I would probably see numbers like this for how I'm able to, for my reach, this is about as good as I can hope for. And we just kind of have to hope for others picking it up more. So Yeah, but like if it fails, I'm not gonna have this nagging feeling like, oh, I needed to do more, because I feel like I'm kind of close to the maximum of what I know how to do for promoting this. But I'm still gonna keep doing some interviews. I have some more lined up, but yeah, it's a big unknown. Has the Stop Killing Games campaign affected your personal life in any manner? Yeah, in terms of time and energy and just general stress for getting deadlines and stuff. And I mean, my YouTube income has fallen about in half since I started this. Thankfully, I got the game dungeon out, so that should give me like a little bit of CPR to the channel there. Yeah, and future game dungeons are going to be shorter for sure and probably more fun. But yeah, it's mostly just the massive time and energy sink. And yeah, it's left me a bit frayed. But, you know, yeah, like I quoted in the birthday video, it's better to regret something you have done than haven't done. So that's very much my attitude on this. Let's see. What was the... Checking for more Stop Killing Games questions. Oh yeah, this is all the same person. He had a bunch, so I may just pick a few. Oh, he was asking if this starting before the election was beneficial for the cause. Well, I mean, we had some MEPs sign on, member of European Parliament sign on to it, but they both lost their seats, so that helped some. I mean, we got an answer from the EU Commission that way. But the answer really, looking at the big picture, that answer you could have interpreted as saying, no, you really should have just sent the crew to the consumer protection agencies and been doing what you were already doing. So that's one way of interpreting that answer. I mean, it didn't hurt, but like I say, I didn't choose the timing on this. Ubisoft did. This all centered around the crew shutdown because it was the best candidate for taking action. Okay, somebody's asking a way to send donations your way. There is to me personally, but I want to be super clear, this would just go for food and rent for me. This would not go towards campaign funds because we're kind of seeing how much we can get organically off of that. And if we do start accepting funds, that is not going to be through me. That's going to have to be through the organizers themselves handling all the tax forms and paperwork, and they might have to set up like a nonprofit or something. So look, I've pushed so much on this already, and I am not a fan of getting into things where if I handle it incorrectly, that means I'm breaking the law. So I don't want any part of the responsibility on that. Like that's almost like a kryptonite for me. Like to give you an example, the first year I moved to Poland, I ended up paying double taxes because I could, despite spending weeks, if not kind of months off and on, trying to figure it out, I couldn't figure out how to declare exemption from self-employment tax for countries that have a totalization agreement with the United States. Now, I'm sure that information is online now, but man, back then, I could guarantee you it was online nowhere. Just absolutely nowhere. So figuring out Byzantine tax laws is like my kryptonite. I hate that so much, and I'm not great at it. But so if they decide to do that later, that's gonna have to be their decision. And even then, I'll kind of tepidly promote it. But see, for me, I have to kind of be convinced. But if you want to donate to me personally, and what you would probably get out of that would be more Game Dungeon and goofy videos like that, you can go to cursefarms.com. I have a donation page there. But I wanted that's separate from the campaign. So I just wanted to make that very clear. Oh yeah, so this other guy's questions. They're saying, I think I should have a one-to-one session with Asmongold. I'd be happy to do that. I've sent a couple emails to addresses I was given. I didn't get a response, but I imagine somebody as big as he does probably gets a zillion, so it probably got buried or maybe just got sent straight to the trash. I have no idea. I tried messaging on Twitter, but you had to have Twitter or X Premium to message him. I said, well, I don't have to do this and pay for a Twitter membership on that. You're welcome to mention that on my behalf. So yeah, if he's interested, I'm fine with coming on for an interview or just discussing whatever. I mean, we've absolutely appreciated the attention he's put on this. So in fact, I think you could lay a lot of the success of both the Consumer Protection Action and probably a lot of the signatures on his doorstep because he is a big YouTuber. But yeah, well, it's like I said in the ECI promotion video that, me reaching out generally just doesn't work. But others reaching out that are like fan bases, that tends to be way more effective. So, and he was asking if the people of USA will get a chance to make a difference in this. Well, indirectly, it's hard to know how much people in the USA are making a difference because by contacting others that do qualify to act on this, that's as good as if you did it yourself because, if that person wasn't going to act and you got them to act, well, then that, again, you kind of doing it through them. But if you mean directly, I would bet against it. It's not impossible, but again, it would be nice. But I think your only opportunity would be having it through an act of Congress. And boy, that's way out of my league. And for everybody saying, oh, no, you can do this through the states, only California, because the ULIS can circumvent state law and saying you agree to have an arbiter on this issue in California and bypass the state laws. And the rulings basically say that's fine. So you can't just have a win in Minnesota or Arkansas or something and then make your way from, no, it's all exempt. They have got this sucker locked down in the U.S. So, okay, so more questions. Just a few more, I think, on Stop Killing Games, and we'll get to regular stuff. Are there plans to do a stream interview with Louis Rossmann? Yeah, I've contacted him. He's open to the idea. But as I understand it, Louis Rossmann is not good with scheduling things, he told me. That he said, he basically can't do something where it says, okay, we'll do this at Thursday at 7 because it sounds like he's just doing stuff all the time. So, if his ebb and flow align that we can do a stream and I'm available at short notice, then sure. So, yeah, I'm all for it, but, I'm not pushing him on it either. And the nice thing about this initiative is we do have time. So if this was in a month from now, that's just as good because people can still sign, But yeah, I have had some contact with him. And yeah, hey, he's doing it his style. And the thing is, I guess that makes a little more sense to me now that he can't schedule stuff and he's just doing things all the time. Because I don't get how you do something like run a business and be active in social media and run a consumer movement, and make regular YouTube videos. I'm just thinking, and have a relationship and I was thinking and sleep. I don't know how he gets all that done. So the fact that he does operate in this kind of constant ongoing stuff, I guess maybe explains it. So yeah, I am not seeking to intrude upon his time if that's going to be a problem for him. So let's see. Okay. Are you afraid of the EU law being passed potentially pushing video game ownership even further from consumers by incentivizing cloud gaming services as a solution to avoiding requiring end-of-life plans? Not at all. I think but like this, there's a possibility of that, but I think it would only increase the odds 5-10% more than what's already happening. I have to remind you, Stadia had exclusives. So we were already at And then I mentioned like the original Xbox One reveal. I mean, companies are trying that, and they would have done it already years ago if it wasn't more profitable. Because, see, Stadia failed. Xbox One had a competition, but they got some blowback too. Because, put it like this, if subscription only game, like if cloud, I mean, Google is a major company. Yeah, they make missteps, but they can handle technology and streaming. So if they weren't able to make it work, that makes me think like the market's just not big enough for them to do that. But they're going to keep trying. I mean, or maybe not Google specifically, but other players in this space. And before that, we had OnLive. So thankfully, there are qualitative drawbacks to doing streaming only. You know, like you have artifact compression. There's some minor color difference, but I think the big one is latency. And like if you're like a real competitive gamer, like streaming only is just death. See, I mean, for many games I play, I could probably live with the latency, although it depends. Like, I mean, even like single player stuff, if it's like a real Twitch shooter, you know, you don't want that 40 milliseconds extra delay on top of whatever's going on in the processing. But what? Yeah, see, somebody's saying NVIDIA has GeForce Now, Sony has PlayStation Now. Though those don't have exclusives, I don't think. So that's something. Yeah, I'm not against that as an option. But, you know, once they start getting exclusives, that's when it gets existential. But no, I mean, I think companies already want that badly, but the market's only so big for it. But yeah, no, you know, I made this analogy on an email before where, you know, when people talk about, like, oh, aren't you scared it's going to get worse? Again, from our perspective, nothing gets worse than games being destroyed for gaming. So I compared it to like an inmate who's on death row attempting an escape, and somebody's saying, oh, you shouldn't try to escape, they might kill you. It's like, yeah, so? Like, because what's the alternative? You know, that's really how I'm looking at this. Because people could say like, oh, it might get worse. Well, how do you know it's not going to get worse already on the trajectory we're on, you know? So, yeah, and that might scare other people who feel that there is more to lose, but I'm not seeing it. And I mean, I've seen this practice just get worse and worse over time, because it used to be subscription-only games and MMOs. And I was never like a huge MMO fan, though. MMOs have always been like a love-hate thing with me, because there's almost none of them that I think like, oh yeah, I love this kind of gameplay. But then I'll love like the big worlds they create and all the art assets and like the atmosphere and everything. So at first I could kind of ignore it because it was only MMOs. And then it kind of came more to like multiplayer, like the single player would be safe, but then the multiplayer wouldn't. And for a lot of these multiplayer games, I thought they were just kind of so-so, the multiplayer portions anyway. So I kind of ignore that. And then they started coming to like, you know, single player or the multiplayer hybrid kinds. And then it's like, okay, well now it's coming for everything. So, a few more questions. Let's see. If companies are forced to put an expiration date on their live service games, couldn't that be spun into some sort of fear of missing out hype marketing? Yeah, it could, but I feel like in the present day that might backfire, and if that might be all it takes to kind of kill attempts like this. I guess if that's stuck and having expiration dates still stuck and then all of our attempts fail, then at some point I just have to accept defeat on this. But part of what's driven me crazy on this is this overwhelmingly feels like everybody just sat back and then the industry has been kind of letting this happen, and because nobody's pushed back on this, and this hasn't been established legally. So it's like if we lose, we lose. But to lose only because we did nothing, and that's the part that just drove me crazy. on this and has been the real fire behind all of this. If I thought this was hopeless from the beginning, I never would have started it, because I mean, I'm not a zealot enough to just go against hopeless odds. The fact that this is, in some areas, this appears to look like coin toss odds to me, is what just made me push so hard on it. Generally speaking, why do so many people seem to actively defend corporate interests to the detriment of the consumer, that is, themselves? Well, in this case, I think I suspect it's a vocal minority, where the people who are against this might be really against this and very outspoken about it. And look, I think the majority of people just either don't know or don't care, either way. Or they won't care until it finally sinks in, which could be 10, 15 years later. Out of people who do understand the situation, I would bet it's 90% or higher who are in favor of having end-of-life plans for games. Because on one hand, you have your preservation people and people who just want to keep the game that they paid for. And on the other hand, you have like the consumer rights people who are just like, no, wait, I paid money for this. I damn well am going to get to keep my game. And it's like, and they take, great offense at that, because you're taking away their rights, the way they look at it. And again, I bet those numbers are pretty high. But the thing is, everybody who feels like that, they're not necessarily commenting on it. So, but for those that do feel this way, I mean, there's a few theories. I think part of it's kind of like a bit of Stockholm syndrome. And you see this more, especially in games, than just this issue. Like, have you ever seen an argument on a game where the game is doing something, either the game itself is doing something really poorly, or else some consumer practice is really bad? Like charging for save games or something like that. Something that's like comes across as real consumer hostile. Have you ever seen an issue like that? And then you'll be seeing people rush to their defense on it. I think what's happening is some people have kind of like black and white thinking, and they really like that game. So the fact that you're criticizing that game on anything, means they have to defend that because they have like a personal attachment to it. And they're not really kind of understanding that this is like not trying to destroy the game. It's trying to make future games better, or kind of like protect the medium more. So, yeah, and somebody else is mentioning a fear towards any shakeup of the status quo. Yeah, there could be the perception that, oh no, if we criticize this, then the people giving us these good games are going to stop making them, and then we'll have lost everything we have. And this may not be a very rational way of thinking, but emotionally it can be very compelling. So I think that's behind some of it. So, yeah, that would be my guess. And then there's also some people where they might be for this on some level, but then this clashes against another value they have that they consider even more important. That's another place this has come from. So for example, some people who are just against government intervention and just about anything, that could be their highest value. So they're well, I might be for this, but you're getting the government to step in. No, I can't support this. No, so it could be kind of like that. That could be another element to it, so that there's conflicting values there, where they might be for this in theory, but when the rubber hits the road, they're against it because it clashes with another value they have that's more important to them. Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, I think a lot of people can be like that. I'm even like that with the stop killing games thing. Put it like this: if the only way we could save games meant people had to die, then I'd be like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I guess I can't support this because the cost of that is too high. But that's not really the situation we're in. In fact, I think the ask is actually incredibly small looking at it through the long term if it were to pass. So it's, but not everybody sees it that way. But okay, I think I have like 2 more questions here. Or maybe there's, okay, yeah, this is one. Well, this one is a question, but I think there was another one on this also. They're saying they would like to see some counter arguments against pirate software, Prime, and some of the other detractors of the current initiative, Stop Killing Games. Okay, I'll just give like a real quick kind of background on this. Our most outspoken critic of the campaign has been YouTube channel or streamer, goes by Pirate Software. And his original video on this, he gave like a reaction video and he unloaded like a lot of insults on it. You think I insulted his mother from how he responded. But the most noteworthy part of it is that he kept saying repeatedly, this is not a problem. This is not a problem. Like, so I would say, he was responding to my video and I was saying like, then the game shuts down and you can never run it again. He's like, that's not a problem. It's a live service game. He kept coming in. So I think he's against this ideologically 100%. So that was his first video, but he misunderstood, I want to say like 3/4 of it, but I also think that wouldn't have mattered because he was just against the core concept. He's just a complete opponent to it. And like the second video, he reacted to a response I left because a bunch of people told me about it. So I left a reply saying, we do have a values clash on this, but I think you're also misunderstanding a lot of what was said. And I offered to discuss this and clarify things. He said no, he was not interested, and I heard in another stream he was also not interested. So I figured, all right, fine. Then he made a third video. That one's on YouTube now. I think he deleted the older video. The third video, he just called it Stop Killing Games. He still misunderstood it, and unfortunately that one is way bigger than any I've made on it. And it's kind of misrepresenting the campaign in a lot of ways. So that's kind of frustrating, but like I said, I'm not the ideal person to tackle this because a really big person would have been good for that. And then he made a fourth video. He was still misunderstanding some of it, but he's seen the beginning more of it in the fourth one. That's the Stop Killing Games 2. And yeah, he was a lot more polite in the third and fourth videos. The first one, he was coming out all the way on it. So he was making what sounded like a really kind of fringe defense of it in the fourth one. Like the idea. Anyway, since then, even without all these comments, I was seeing some confusion on the issue. So I made a giant video, frequently asked questions on the channel. I'll give a link to that here. And what? I think that's going to clear up 90% or more of all people's questions. Now, of course, tons of people aren't going to see that video. I don't expect them to, but like I said, if somebody has millions of followers and I have a fraction of that, I'm not going to reach everybody, and then it's just going to be the same points over and over again. So I think that did a decent job of clearing up what's going on. Now, you mentioned other people who are against this. I actually haven't seen much of that, or I've seen a couple. I've been made aware of a couple videos, but I haven't watched them because they're mostly reacting to Pirate Software's video on it, and he got a lot of things wrong. So it's basically we're seeing somebody come out against a strawman argument of the strawman representation of the campaign. So it's like, well, if they want to argue against things we're not even asking for, I kind of don't really want to sit through and watch all that. It's just going the wrong direction. That said, if anybody, especially if it's a more sizable audience that might have Europeans watching, wants me on who's against this, I'm willing to discuss it. Now, if it's a very tiny channel, I might pass because I've been pretty busy. And look, I'm looking at this tactically. I want to speak to your audience, essentially, if you want to kind of debate me on this. But I am willing. Look, I would refer everyone to that video, frequently asked questions I made. I don't think people are going to be very confused on it if they watch that. And it's timestamped too if you want to jump to different parts of it. I think it covers 90% of issues or more, and it's just really fringe stuff that I might have missed in there. So, yeah, somebody's saying he successfully tainted the whole conversation. To a degree, but, you know, that's the risk. So, I take that as a sign we're at least, you know, having some reach. But yeah, I didn't know, this might be a pure coincidence, but I noticed when he did put up the first video, that's when our first boost from the signatures dropped. So maybe he can take credit for that. I don't know. Or it could, I was expecting to just hit a wall at some point anyway. So might be a coincidence, might be on him. But yeah, whatever. You know, it's my goal in this. My goal in this is to give this my absolute best effort. And if that's not good enough, well, then that's not good enough. So, I mean, only so much of this is within my control, is the way I look at this. And I feel like I've given this, you know, yeah, I said a B rating as to effectiveness. I've given myself a solid A, maybe A plus as far as my effort on this. So I'm not seeing much I could have done more on. Or if there was, the odds of it making a difference are like so minimal that I kind of made the calculation that it didn't seem to be worth it versus the effort required. So, someone's saying, did anyone ever approach you with an alternative idea to the campaign, good or bad? Yeah, but it basically came down to clear labeling and vote with your wallet were the two versions I've heard. I think, I'm drawing a blank now, but I think there have been a couple people that they're basically for this, but they might want like tweaks with the initiative or for us to be aware of it. I'm much more open to that idea. Like, you know, like I said, I'm in favor of any solution that solves the problem. So if there was something that, you know, developers needed something more clearly specified, sure. But I really don't think that's the primary issue here, especially when we're looking at future games. Because if it's a known requirement from the design phase onward, look, developers know how to make games that could satisfy that. I think it has to do, well, one, I think this is like a vocal minority that are really against this. And two, I think that's probably not, I lost my train of thought there. That happens more when it's hot, I'm noticing. Like there's less oxygen in the room. I think it's more of like a not wanting to do it issue rather than not being able to come up with a way to do it. Okay, and I think there was like one more question. Let's see. And then we'll get to the regular stuff. Oh yeah, with the Stop Killing Games movement, I'm curious as to if games have become security hazards to play falls under your definition of reasonably playable. It says examples of this are like older Call of Duty games on PC, where playing multiplayer creates the risk of getting IP grabbed, hacked, etc. Yeah, no, that still counts because you can't account for everything. Look, Windows 98, Windows XP, if you were to fire those up now and connect to the internet, you are at risk. So for the security things, what the company could say is we are, what's the word I'm looking for? Not divesting. We are, God, basically they're not, I'm drawing a blank on words now. I want to say exonerating. No, that's not exonerating. They could claim in no uncertain legal terms that they are assuming no liability for what happens to users' systems after this and assuming no liability for their actions. Yeah, non-accountable. Look, they can put that in the EULA and that is fine. That's something that came up in another interview I had. We're not actually against EULAs. We're against the provision that takes away all ownership and having that enforced. Everything else, that's kind of, you kind of do need complicated agreements covering all this, because, you know, you need something, like if you think you don't, no, you do, because you need something that specifies you're only entitled to that copy of the game to play, not the rights to the entire franchise. That's something that's said in EULAs. Or, you know, what's another example? Or that they do offer support to a certain level. So yeah, look, all they have to do is say, this is at your own risk. And I even saw somebody like redistributing a game, I think it was Dark Reign. They were redistributing a copy of it, and they had these patches, but then as soon as I downloaded it, it set off my virus scanner, and I sent it to Virus Total, and like, yep, that has a virus in it. So that is a risk also once you get into like third-party hosting. So yeah, I want companies to be able to wash their hands of the matter. You know, they do not need to assume any liability if they're ending support for this and no longer selling it. And this becomes a, you know, at your own risk sort of situation. But, you know, I think the community can kind of work out the kinks on that. Oh yeah, okay, they're saying, okay, I should clear this up. They're saying, we're playing multiplayer creates the risk of getting IP grabbed, hacked. Okay, one, nothing about what we're doing means the developer has to lose intellectual property rights. Okay, especially for future games, like even for present games, see the video fact on that. But so yeah, even if the individual users get to keep their, you know, individual copy of the game to play indefinitely, that does not mean they own the rights to the franchise or the game series or anything like that. All the intellectual property of the game remains in the developer's house. I mean, it's the same, like if you sell a book, you know, if you buy like a Harry Potter book or something, you don't own anything about the Harry Potter franchise or intellectual property. What you have is your copy of that book that you can read as long as you want. So it's the same principle there. Yeah, just because you have access to the texts that make up that help compose that intellectual property, you didn't gain the rights to it. So, to all of it, I guess. Okay, so I think that's it for Stop Killing Games questions. Well, they're saying, you think of trying to reach out to any type of YouTuber, not just gaming related? Maybe if they would be sympathetic to this, like if it was like a consumer rights thing, like Louis Rossmann, that's a perfect kind of crossover. Because, I mean, if they're just like a car channel or something like that, well, it's like, yeah, you can make the heated seats car argument, but I'm guessing most of them aren't really going to care about this, which is understandable. You know, I mean, if it would be like somebody coming onto my channel and talking about how, like say with car engines, like they're designing them the wrong way for planned obsolescence. It's like, yeah, I mean, I'll probably be against that, but it's not really in my wheelhouse, and I'm not going to be like super motivated to rush out and sign against that. Whereas you kind of want, gaming channels falls in at 100%. Consumer rights or digital rights falls in it just, you know, like 90% or something like that. Once you get up beyond that, it's more of a niche issue. And I'm not trying to get everybody to care about this. I think that's kind of a losing battle. I mean, this is hobbyist activism. You know, we're trying to kind of protect the hobby, essentially, or the medium. I guess with some like kind of creativity or art channels might cross over, but. Okay, I'll check this because I'm just noticing it now. Have you considered doing an omnibus episode for Game Dungeon where you try a few games outside of your comfort zone? Maybe, but I don't know. The thing is, like, I don't think that would make for such a great video because, okay, I'm playing a game that, I mean, I guess outside your, see, there's stuff that's outside my comfort zone that I'm interested in, but it's like, there's kind of a barrier with the learning curve. But then there's other stuff where I just don't like that kind of gameplay or that theme of game. And do you really want to watch a video about somebody who's just not really into something? Or I don't think that'd be very compelling for me. I mean, I think it might be better if it's something that's like more unpredictable. That might work, but or get more of an idea about why you filter out the games you do. Well, that's going to come out in one future video at some point, or at least one aspect of that. So someone's saying, what games are even outside your comfort zone? I'm thinking of stuff like, well, 4X games are definitely outside my comfort zone, where I really want to like them, but part of me doesn't. Like really, ones with big learning curves, like the Total War Warhammer series is kind of like that, where I'm like 100% on board thematically. I'm on board with like half of the gameplay, half of it I'm just like, I don't know, this is kind of feeling a bit more like work here rather than entertainment. Like, yeah, I mentioned like Sunless Sea was kind of like that, where I think games with like really big learning curves where they're not easing you into it that well, or the complexity is going beyond the point of fun to me. Some games are like that, or stuff where it's kind of a survival game, but they're really getting bogged into the mechanics of it. You know, so not like a Resident Evil style where the survival elements, you know, pretty straightforward, but more like the kind of DayZ style where it's much more haphazard. A lot more things can go wrong in ways that aren't always clear, and it's stuff like that. And for some themes, like I'm not really big into most desert games or like games that are in a bunch of ruins that aren't particularly good looking. One games I just kind of find kind of ugly. Like that was one thing that like maybe not that interested in Cruelty Squad. Like a lot of people say good things about it, but I'm thinking like, I don't know. This aesthetic is really turning me off. So, let's see. But yeah. Ones where the complexity is like giving me pause. See, some games can get very complex, but if it's all kind of coming towards me at a good pace, that like, oh, okay, I'm kind of grasping this, and it doesn't feel like it's turning into complexity for its own sake or feeling like work. It feels like it's kind of flowing, but there's just many things you need to take care of. Like They Are Billions was kind of like that with me. Like I had no problem with the complexity of that game. I could even go a little bit higher than that level. But okay, so I'll start answering the actual voted on questions now. Go up to the top. When you're in front of a camera, do you read from a prompter or do you do takes after reading notes or a script? Well, if I'm looking right at the camera, like with the green screen videos, I'm having to memorize it. And that's why it takes so long and I hate doing those. And there's also a lot of things I have to set up to get those shots. So the video frequently asked questions, that was kind of a little bit of half and half, where I put it like this: anytime I'm looking right at the camera, I am not looking at a prompter. So, and I'm not the best at, you know, or I'm not really that great at just getting quick notes and then knowing everything I want to say. Sometimes I am if I'm very familiar with the topic. Other times I'm tripping and stumbling and then just, you know, spacing out, trying to remember what I was talking about. So that I definitely prefer having notes. So yeah, if you notice I'm like looking off to the side, not at the camera, I'm looking at the question or notes. Or sometimes I'm just looking at the chat to some extent also. Oh, that's a good question. This is from the live chat. What is the rarest game you own? Well, I mean, until I released it, I would say Bip-Bop 3. But I guess it's less rare now. I mean, I have I have a couple delisted ones. There's one, was it Seraph, I think it's called? I get it mixed up with Soul Seraph, but at least one of those is delisted, so that one would be a higher one. It was like this platformer I haven't had a chance to try out yet. Yeah, that's a good question. I'd have to think about that longer. But yeah, that's a decent one, a delisted game. Okay, but oh yeah, this was the the longer question I had to write some notes on for. Okay, if you had all the money and power, how would you realistically stop global warming from happening? Well, my first thought was this question is kind of like describing zombie realism. I've always found that term an oxymoron, because, well, if it's very realistic, there are no zombies, Uh, and since there are no zombies, there's no basis for what would be realistic. It's like maybe shooting them in the head does nothing. It's because there's no precedent for this. What? So yeah, I would not have all the money and power, and okay, well, I took some notes. I may not go super into depth on some of this just because I've had an awful lot of how to explain things in the future are not necessarily impossible just with the games campaign. So I only want to do so much of that with something even more, ambitious that I'm not even going to attempt with global warming, but it's a similar kind of attitude. What? All right, so yeah, okay, yeah, I was looking at the wrong spot. Yeah, the notes I have. Okay, I guess I would go for like the low-hanging fruit first, because there's kind of two sides of trying to stop global warming. There's on one side, there's not actively making it worse. And I think that's the part that's the absolute hardest to correct for or to reduce. And that's where you would see all of the biggest resistance. The other half of that is actual reduction. And I think that the world would be much more flexible on, but its impact might not wouldn't rise to the levels that we need for most solutions. So but I guess even on the other side, okay, well, I guess on the first side for the reduction, like the actually correcting for it, because like let's say right now we wave the magic wand and we stopped all additional greenhouse gases. Well, my understanding is it's still going to keep getting hotter, and we're still going to have some feedback loops, like even if everything stopped. So we would actually need to reduce things to actually stop global warming. And I think one of the biggest directions, maybe one of the only ones I would push in on that front would be like algae capture plants. So this would not be I think they're called like direct air capture, where they use fans to run it through some filters to take carbon out of the air. My understanding is using that is almost like a fantasy solution. From my understanding of it is that's delusion at best and maybe some sort of weird grift at worst. Because I think that's worth pursuing from a research perspective, like let's do experiments and have prototypes. Yeah, I'm not trying to trash anything like that because, hey, maybe we do get lucky and have some massive breakthrough. But to propose that as a solution, I consider like malpractice, essentially. However, with algae plants, those could expand. I think those might not still be enough to do everything, but if we approach this with like the same sort of effort we approach manufacturing in World War II, that might actually start reversing things after a few decades. Where by algae plants, essentially see somebody's saying bury trees. I did check on this. Apparently algae is 400 times more effective at storing carbon than trees. So if we do this right. So like, to me, that's like the only game in town, realistically, for how to start reducing the carbon out of the air, unless we make some other big breakthrough I don't know about. So obviously, there's many more components to this, but the basics of it are you have like these giant pools, which you can use salt water on. You don't need to have fresh water. You cultivate the algae, so you have an algae bloom, then you scoop all that out, dry it, and then store it somewhere, usually underground, then repeat. So that's the basics of it. And you just keep doing that over and over and over, just on a massive scale. You know, like I've heard somebody say, you know, this process has taken millions of years to get the carbon out of the air, so it's going to take some time to get it back out again since it's been released. But so again, that might still not go far enough. But I've heard like some zones, like in like the Sahara coastline, might be ideal for that, or for that sort of thing, where there's not a lot anyway, except just a lot of sun and like, you know, ocean water. Well, that might be all you need, really. So yeah, and somebody's saying they're saying they've heard a company that takes carbon out of the air to make bricks for construction purposes. My understanding is the efficiency of that is basically criminal for trying to propose that as a realistic solution. I mean, I could be mistaken on that, but like that's my understanding is that's a fantasy solution. Even the algae stuff might not cut it, but it's going to be a hell of a lot more effective and scalable than something like that takes all this specialized manufacturing. Here, at its most basic, you need salt water, you need algae, you need the sun, and you need people operating it. Now, of course, there's going to be more things like, you know, good designs to maximize the algae and, you know, have a system set up to bury it. And there's going to be a million details, but at its basics, that's a very scalable thing, you know. We don't need like highly specialized manufacturing and things to deal with that. And the other one that I think would actively reduce the problem, this wouldn't reduce it exactly. It's more like it could buy us time indefinitely, would be the blot out the sun option. And that will not be popular. However, I think that actually will be more popular than trying to reduce the damage that we're doing in many ways. So yeah, that's how much resistance I think there is on trying to scale down for it. So when you talk about realism, I've said before, my politics are fantasy and I know it, you know, but we're talking about like a hypothetical scenario where we could somehow punch through all that. But even then, with blotting out the sun, I do not think sulfur dioxide is the way to go on that, because I've heard it would be in very minute quantities, but that's basically the same process as acid rain. So I don't think we should have acid rain all over the entire Earth, even if it's diluted. My understanding is there are substitutes we can use for that. I think calcium carbonate, if I'm remembering the right chemical or compound, is one of them, but there might be others, but they're more expensive, which is the reason we hear sulfur dioxide or proposed on it. So yes, I am also against raining down acid rain on the entire Earth. So just want to be clear on that point. And that would be and that wouldn't solve it, but that could potentially let us postpone the problem indefinitely, because the greenhouse gases could keep on rising, but if we're able to control the heat and reflect more and more of it back out into space, that would buy us times. But that's not the preferred way to do it. That's what I see as kind of like a last resort option, where everything else is hopeless and we're refusing to do anything else to kind of reduce it, and that's all that's left on the table. Now, for reduction, this kind of gets more and more extreme, and this is where a lot of people will kind of misinterpret the message on this and think you're trying to doom humanity or kill everybody, or it's like, no, not at all. The whole point of this is try to prevent, like decades from now, mass starvation or wars over resources or stuff like that. That's going to lead to billions dead. So we're kind of comparing every measure that's proposed here against that. And I think that's the message that kind of gets mixed like every time against this. Or from some people who just, see, that's the thing. Once you get into I think there's kind of a myth that's kind of spread or what's God? I can't think of the word. I want to say purported, but I don't think that's a word. It's something that means that keeps popping up perpetually. You know, I need a thesaurus today. What that keeps kind of reemerging is that, oh, we can still have our same standard of living. We just have to move to different technologies. I think, except for maybe a few specialized areas, that's largely false and that's a myth. I think we're way overextended, and I think having our same quality of life in all areas I think the only possibility of doing that is with more environmental destruction. So you have to kind of accept that we're going to have lower standards in some areas, not in all areas. And I think that's what would make resistance to this immense. But it wouldn't all have to be bad, because you could have improvements in other areas, like especially for the people who are kind of worst affected, you know, like the extreme poor. However, they tend to have the least amount of political power anyway. So that's, like I said, this all goes back to kind of a fantasy thing. But you could have things like having more basic needs guarantees, like housing, food, you know, have less worry about that. You could have less hours you have to work. That's another thing way life could improve. Like imagine like you have to give up some things, but then you have to work a third of the hours you do now. I think a lot of people might like that, you know, especially if it was a choice, you know, like, but like, okay, some things that would have to be given up. One of the biggest uses of fossil fuels is for construction and like steel and concrete. So we would have to drastically reduce the amount of construction and development we do. And that's going to be like, that's like science fiction to a lot of people in order to address that. Another big thing, which would be hugely unpopular, would be a whole, like I think something like 20%, the figures vary depending on the source, of greenhouse gas emissions are from methane from livestock, like cattle specifically. So beef might have to become a delicacy. Oh boy, talk about resistance to that. I think you would have a lot more people who would be in favor of blotting out the sun than giving up beef. Okay, so that's another thing but if we're trying to address this honestly, that's a big area you have to look at. Fossil fuels for transportation. Like, yes, we can have electric vehicles, but the resource usage to scale we're doing things so inefficiently already just with combustion vehicles that the idea to scale that all to electric vehicles, I think just becomes maybe not fantasy, but we're talking like immense environmental destruction, just in a different ways, to the point where it's kind of like swapping one devil for another to try to scale on the same degree with electric vehicles. I think the most obvious low-hanging fruit for transportation is to go all in on trains. Like to just have trains be the answer for as much as possible and try our best one way or another to get as many vehicles as possible off the road. And even maintaining roads, like, you know, asphalt, everything, that takes fossil fuels too. So we would kind of want, like, I think the most sane way to do it would be maybe just have like roads more for kind of urban areas or small towns to like get around and move things just some short distances. And then for long distances, just have everything be trains essentially, or flight. And actually flight's another one, like private jets. I don't know how much they're the contributor, but for sure, airplanes in general contribute a lot. So like, it's not that trains are like 100% green energy, but like your efficiency rating is so much better than anything you're gonna get from cars. And so the total So it's like I'd rather have something that's doing like 3% of the environmental damage but moving the same amount of people than something that's, doing, let's say, the same 3%, but they're only moving like 5% of the same people, if you get what I'm saying, compared to electric cars. So yeah, trains are the most obvious no-brainer from like where to start on adapting. However, I say no-brainer, but of course the auto industry is huge and they're going to lobby against that to the very end. So that's not realistic in the sense that we kind of have like a lot of regulatory capture. And a lot of people like cars, though I think if we have more and more good public transportation, you'd have more that would be in favor of, be willing to take a train if they didn't have to pay for cars, insurance, repairs, gas, that sort of thing. Yeah, I don't think the answer would be to ban cars, especially as a transition, because you'd have a lot of enthusiasts that would push back against that. Plus, cars, you want cars for something like an ambulance or a fire truck or moving things small distance just across the city. Yeah, the cars can make sense for a lot of things like that. But yeah, try to, I guess, restrict air travel more and more. So like have more full flights. That's another thing. Like society on some level is going to have to slow down in order to do that. Because like, now you can kind of catch a flight the same day, or if you order something from Amazon, you can have it tomorrow or something. I think we need to get away from that more and more for anything that's not an emergency. Because that's what I mean. That's a lower standard of living. Like, so you might have to wait until that plane is filled before it takes off. Or, you order something, you might have to wait until that shipment is filled and comes along on a convenient schedule. So it might take a couple weeks. Now, again, there could be a lot of exceptions for emergencies. So that's what I mean. You really would need to reduce standard of living in some ways. But again, going along with the idea that we're slowing down and not producing as many things we don't need, that means less people need to be working, which means more free time if it's handled in a smart way, which I would almost bet money it wouldn't be unless people are rioting. So, yeah, these are lots of unpopular measures, but if you're asking how to solve the problem, that seems to be it for me. And again, for everybody saying that like, oh, see, he wants all this bad stuff for it. Well, again, comparing it against the alternative, which is somewhere down the line, billions are dying, mass starvation, and wars over things like water and food and everything, and we can't feed everyone. To me, scaling down your life to a slower lifestyle overall and giving up some things sounds a lot better than mass starvation is the way I'm looking at it. Yeah, one thing that would be essential, and I'm not sure how you would do this, but you would need to figure it out somehow, would be having some connection of environmental damage and preservation to economics. Because right now it's just a complete joke. Like, we just don't factor that into the price of, I would think, most things. Yeah, even fossil fuels are just, like, it's a complete, if you look at it at the long term, then the way we price things is just insane. Like the market has done a horrendous job at that. Like, okay, like I brought in that, okay, here's another one where I've heard the numbers vary, but even the low number is still ridiculous. Okay, 1 barrel of oil, I heard one source saying is equivalent to 25,000 hours of human labor. Another I've heard is saying more like 7,700 hours. And if you were paying that, okay, for the bigger number, they're saying that's about 12 and a half years of work. And if you were paying them the average American salary, which would be about $25, that would come out to, what was it? I have a number written down, but maybe I wrote down the wrong number. Well, yeah, 25 times 25,000. Okay, so that would come out to $625,000 for 1 barrel of oil. Right now it's priced at what, $80 or $100 or something? I haven't checked in a while. So that's how off our numbers are. And the thing to remember is oil is essentially a one-time thing. You know, this is the result of millions of years of of processes that kind of cooked the algae or the microscopic life in the ocean millions of years ago into oil or coal or what have you. But we're pricing it by just how easy it is to get out of the ground and what people are willing to pay for it at this point in time. So we're not factoring in that this is a one-time resource at all. So that's what I mean about the market just does an awful job at this. Now we can come up with equivalents for some types of oil, like let's say for fuel, if we wanted to have ethanol. But that's a very labor intensive to do that without oil, and that takes up farmland. And I'm not sure like what a completely unsubsidized cost. That's a good question. What would the cost of the equivalent, the fuel equivalent of ethanol compared to oil for what you can make like gasoline out of? What would the cost of that be if you did it without fossil fuels? So, you know, whatever, you could use like solar power, which uses fossil fuels to manufacture the equipment for, but if we want to cheat a little bit there, solar power, maybe nuclear power, and the farmland, you know, for doing that, and the human labor and the time it takes to make the equivalent of that. I bet it would be in the thousands, I think, easily. Probably tens of thousands. So that might be our real, but see, that's competing with food, so that farmland. So, I mean, our pricing on fossil fuels does not represent, if you look at the long term, it does not represent sanity at all. It should be closer to something like gold. But just because just because we're only looking in the short to medium term and there's a lot of it, we don't price it that way. But see, that's just to show how off it is for market prices. For environmental prices, that's something we frequently don't factor in at all unless there's a huge screw up. And I got curious. I looked into the BP oil spill, like what the estimated economic damage was to that. And BP ended up paying out, it looked like somewhere between like 17 and $20 billion on it for economic damage. But I was thinking that if they were willing to pay that, and I even saw documentaries where they were burying stuff that still does the damage to the oceans, but you don't see it on the surface of the water. I was thinking that it has to be more than that. So I tried to look around to see like if there are any ecologists that estimated like what the damage was to that. And I got a quote here. The eventual cost, combining damage to complex Gulf and coastal ecosystems, wiping out of the fishing and tourism industries, and long-term health consequences for the population of the region is likely to total over $1 trillion. Okay, so that means we're ballparking the environmental damage from one of the bigger ones that have been recorded by a factor of 50 or more. So, like I said, we are not factoring this into our economic system. And plus, you get into some things where you almost can't put a dollar value on it because it's kind of infinite. Like, I'm thinking of something like Chernobyl, like in the exclusion zone. That is not going to be safe for humans to live there, you know, without getting without basically ending your life early and causing contamination and other things. My understanding is it's about somewhere between like 20 and 22,000 years. So how do we put a price on that for the damage done? I mean, it's kind of like saying, okay, if you lost your arm in an accident, what price do you put on your arm? It's like, well, that's like you're permanently reduced in multiple ways that we can never recover again. So it's like dollars aren't even the best metric for this, but that'll be a place to start. I don't know. And that's absolutely essential if you want to try to like putting in the real cost of fossil fuel. Oh yeah, that would be another one that would be, again, a low-hanging fruit, but you cannot, that's the thing, you can't do any of this disruption except maybe the algae plants without having stuff ready. to deal with the other problems that causes. Because, again, an obvious one would be to end subsidies of fossil fuels. Look, if you did that, that would cause probably an economic crash within a week, I would think. In fact, that would be an interesting scenario to kind of game out from somebody who's more knowledgeable on this. Like, how much damage would it be if we just ended subsidies on oil, coal, natural gas, and the likes? So you had to pay full market price, full existing flawed market prices on it. Yeah, it's what, like, I don't know, but that would be an easy one to do, but the fallout of that would be enormous. So you'd have to have things like, more guaranteed food and housing, or guaranteed jobs, or, not needing to work as many hours. So something that, see, the important thing is that everybody gets their needs met when you're doing all these changes. Of course, now again, we're talking just in this fantasy theoretical scenario. Realistically, everyone's going to fight all the changes on this tooth and nail, and you're not going to have any progress on it until there's an absolute crisis that the alternative is so god-awful that that's the only time that they'll consider any sort of changes, because then it's finally an upgrade to what existing reality is. So, I mentioned before, like, some people have to learn things the hard way. And I think that's true of like 90 to 95% of what we can do with global warming, unfortunately, is my perception on it. So, yeah, I mean, I could probably think of more things, but those would be the big ones that would, I mean, I guess like education on the issue would help too. Not that it's a problem, but the understanding that like everything we have now is kind of on borrowed time. Like in economic terms, the way we're living right now is kind of like buying a big screen TV, buying a new car, all on like loan shark loans. So like we're in debt. We're enjoying all this stuff and we're in debt and it just haven't collected yet. So yeah, giving up all these luxuries would hurt, but that kind of hurts less than having it repossessed and having the interest payments and, getting evicted and, it's all like that. So yeah, I'm not, this is kind of like fantasy politics discussion is what I'm doing here, because they were asking what's most realistic. I think the blotting out the sun might be more realistic than it sounds once it starts getting bad enough. Like if it's so hot that basically no one can live on the equator unless they're in a bunker or something. And like growing food is impossible in that region. So I think once we're getting to that point, then we might consider the sun blotting out. Or I was thinking of another metric would be, like, how in some areas during like especially in the north, when the summers get really hot, the road will start melting and it's like taffy. I think if that became like a regular occurrence, that might get people thinking about it. However, I think we're more likely to just respond with materials that won't melt for our roads before we would do that. So maybe once Antarctica melted, that might wake more people up, or it might not. It's hard to say. Or the Arctic. Yeah, okay, this is, I've been tempted to make a Ross Rants video on this thing. This is kind of a pet peeve of mine. Somebody's mentioned the George Carlin stand-up routine about saving the planet. And like, I think the line he says, like, the planet's gonna be fine. Yeah, humanity won't be fine, but the planet will be fine. Like, humanity is the one that's gonna be screwed. He said something like that. And I was thinking, well, then what's the point of anything then? Because the planet actually won't be fine. It's going to take a lot. The planet's a rock, okay? So I don't even know how we define how a rock being fine is or not. The only context a rock has of whether it's fine or not is how humans valued that rock. Like, so if you want a geode and it breaks, well, yeah, the geode put together was pretty. Or, if we can use the rock for like industrial usage or something, well, that has meaning and value to us. Or if we want a sculpture out of it, well, yeah, that having that sculpture has a lot more meaning to us than if it's just reduced to rubble. But even then, like at some point, the sun eventually goes nova. I mean, that's way in the future. So if humanity is the only life we know of that has like an intelligence, a consciousness on our level that appreciates life in the same way we do, and the only one with the capacity to potentially escape that kind of nova situation if we eventually made like a generation ship or something like that. So even if you like think, humanity's awful and you only care about animals, the animals are not going to have their own space program. So, it's, I don't really get that thing. I don't really get the reasoning, I guess. It's like if there's no humans, then eventually all the animals die anyway, and the plants. But yeah, eventually all known life dies anyway without humans, and there's no context to anything. So I'm not sure like why people keep quoting that. Like, what's the message exactly? So see, Mars seems to be doing fine without life. Well, what's the context? Like, how do you define Mars being fine? Would Mars still be fine if a giant meteor hit it and it was split into two? I don't think Mars would care, so it's like everything is in relation to like human perception. Now, if we discover intelligent life and aliens, okay, then we can have a different conversation. But even then, I think I'm still on team humanity. So I think we still don't want to go extinct. But yeah, I guess you could make that argument if intelligent life is discovered. But okay, yeah, that was a long question. I don't think the others are nearly as long. How many takes did the modern major general scene require? I don't remember. It just did a few per section until it sounded right and kept moving on. Out of all the Half-Life games, expansions included, which chapter is your favorite? Well, I haven't played Alex yet. I will eventually. I think I've played most of the others. I guess in Half-Life 1, I guess my favorite part might be once you're make it onto the surface for real. Like you make it up once, but then you shove back down again. And then you finally come, because that was, when I first played it, that was my whole context. Like I was trying to escape Black Mesa. And once you finally get on the surface and you're staying there a while, then it finally feels like, okay, you're finally making progress here. So yeah, surface tension. For Half-Life 2, I mean, I guess episode 1 and 2 kind of get lumped in. I guess I guess before you get to the boat, going through the canals, escaping City 17 is my favorite part. And Half-Life Episode 1, I just kind of remember being more of the same. I've only played it once. I don't remember too much of it standing out for favorite. For Episode 2, I like the parts in the forest, and I like the finale. The finale is great. When you're in the car going from one area to the next, trying to stop the Combine from blowing up each building, and you're going to, and it's good music playing. Like, yeah, I like the finale a lot. And for opposing forces or opposing force, I forget which name. I guess probably the finale also. I remember the boss fight being cool. And for Blue Shift, I guess I like the ending. With Blue Shift, I feel like Blue Shift is more like the wavelength like I personally would have an ending. It's like, all right, we made it out of the building. We, with some scientists and a security guard, getting an SUV. We're getting the hell out of here. It's like, yeah, that's a good ending. I like that. So, yeah, somebody's saying Ravenholm is what makes Half-Life 2 for me. Even when I first played it, Ravenholm, I was underwhelmed because I played They Hunger prior to it. And if you've played They Hunger, Ravenholm doesn't have the same bite. It's like, well, I've already seen this, essentially. But But yeah, that would be, and I'll get to Half-Life Alyx eventually. I might want to upgrade my VR headset first. You mentioned before that there are games you sit down and play to completion, and games that I stop playing and watch a playthrough. What would you say is the ratio of each category? Oh, geez, that's hard to say. That I play to completion versus I give up and watch a walkthrough. So these are ones that I'm giving an honest shot. It might actually be like 10 to 20%, the ones I just go through and play through all the way. I don't know. It's hard to say. I've gotten picky, guys. Like, I want that game to be kind of giving me, pulling me in. And it's not that I'm developing a tolerance, or I think it's a very low one, if so, because if it's, look, I love clones, well done clones of good games. So, like, I remember seeing a while ago, there was some article that was criticizing a new Metroid clone, and they were saying that it follows Super Metroid's footsteps a little too much. And I'm thinking, my first thought was, so what's the problem? So, okay, so a different take on Super Metroid, that's fine by me. Like, but that doesn't mean I don't like new game genres too, but it's always kind of a wild west as whether I'm gonna like really like this new thing that I haven't tried before, or if it's like not really my style. So it's not like, I like a lot of first-person shooters. So if a new one comes out that's competent, it has a theme I like, I'm probably gonna like it. So it's not like, nah, I've already played this. But some people do want like something really new. So it's just that, I don't know, I can be picky, it's, or some, even, that's the other thing that's a little different from the past. A lot of games in the past, I like some of them, but then I really hate other aspects of them. And if a game is doing things that I think it's just okay, but then it's doing things I hate, and it looks like this isn't just like one level, and I just need to get to this level, and then it's gonna get back to like being fun again. And it's just like, no, this is like a permanent gameplay shift now, and I don't really like this shift. Yeah, I might bail on it. Whereas I might have stuck with it longer in the past, or for Game Dungeon, I'll stick with it more if the game's intriguing, Let's see. Okay, so I'll get some more live questions later. I barely got into the submitted ones. Okay, stop killing games one. Okay, somebody's asking, there are a few asking about the movie. Guys, the movie, the games campaign, Stop Killing Games campaign, completely froze the movie. Right now, my plan is I'll keep doing the interviews and the emails, but that's a minority of this. So I should still have, one, I'm taking a break for a few days first, and then after that, I plan to resume Game Dungeon and other videos to kind of get my channel breathing again, because again, the income got cut basically in half over time. And then once it's just kind of feels like its heart's beating again, I'll go back to the original plan of going all in on the movie for a couple months. And then once I feel like I've hit some milestones, then I'm gonna go back to kind of like half pace on the regular videos and half on the movie. So like I was expecting to have been finished. I was expecting by this point to have cleared some of those milestones and being back to the half point. That's how much the Stop Killing Games thing screwed everything up. So sorry, but I'm keep trying. Yeah, it sucks. I'm with you. On that. I'm not happy with any of it either. Oh, I didn't see this one. If you could add multiplayer to any game, new or old, what game would you choose and how would it be implemented? Oh, man. Well, chat, feel free to propose some answers. So we're looking at single-player games that would benefit a lot from multiplayer. Man. Well, okay. Off the top of my head, I might say Painkiller, but then didn't I have multiplayer? So, no, okay, that's no good. Man. Okay, somebody's saying Dino Crisis, or maybe they're answering another question. Yeah, I'm sure there's candidates out there. It's just I'm not thinking of ones that would be like a big obvious benefit, because I feel like a whole lot of single player games you could add multiplayer to them and they would just sort of be okay, not great. And usually with multiplayer, like the best ones have more. Okay, I know. Red Faction Guerrilla. Did that have multiplayer? Because that game, the destruction in that game is awesome, and that you could. Okay, it has extensive multiplayer. Damn it! I just never played the multiplayer on these. Okay, damn it. Oh, okay, that's a good suggestion. Somebody says FTL. Final Fantasy 12, I don't know about. Though I did finally watch a couple months back, slowly, I did finally watch a playthrough of Final Fantasy 10. Now, that one had an interesting story. That one was kind of to me, it felt like there's some stuff that's like pretty stupid and cringy, but then the other half of it was pretty interesting and weird, and I like that part of it. Had a very interesting soundtrack too. A lot of good music in that. I might check out some more Final Fantasies that I have no interest in playing, because like I'm not even touching turn-based combat. But but sometimes they create this kind of really fascinating world that I appreciate. But yeah, I don't know anything about 12. Or I think, or I might be. I don't know if it's 12 or 13, but one guy has like a beanie and then like some like bangs hanging out from underneath that. I think that one's either 12 or 13. I don't know which one. So that's as much as I know about 12. Let's see. Yeah, sorry, I didn't have a good answer for that one. I'd really have to think about it. But the FTL is a decent one. Yeah, the idea of somebody crashing your space battle and coming in to make it a three-way thing, that could be good. Or make it a co-op battle, Are there any foreign cultures you really like? Would you ever consider yourself Anglophile, Japanophile, etc.? No, but I guess I realized with different cultures, usually when I think of like, what I like or don't like, I'm not really thinking about the culture in itself. I'm thinking more about like the aesthetic of a lot of what can come out of like their art or their architecture and that sort of thing. So under that, one I like is like kind of ancient Mayan and Aztec stuff. I like the look of that. I like a lot of like kind of colonial Europe and colony things, with that, or Victorian era, with like the way the houses are and the clothes and that sort of thing. But that's since they mentioned Japan, I do like the aesthetic of a place like Tokyo, where it's almost like a bit sci-fi like, with just how it's kind of like this megapolis, and like you have like kind of incredible population density, but really creative architecture and stuff like that. So I like that. I think that's pretty cool. There's probably plenty of other cities. Well, I guess this falls under European. Yeah, European lumps a lot, but honestly, I like a lot of architecture from the French aristocracy. It looks cool. It looks classic. I mean, yeah, I don't like the cost that it came at, but there's a lot of tasteful stuff in there from an art perspective, I think. What are some other designs I like a lot? There's a lot of them I think are like okay, or maybe not quite my thing. Well, I'm always a fan of giant statues, because I'm thinking of like the Jesus statue. Was it in Rio de Janeiro or in Brazil? Like I like big monuments, especially like on mountains or hillsides, that sort of thing. Yeah, well, actually with Roman architecture, I like I guess Romans stole a lot from the Greeks. So yeah, I like the Greek columns, like Roman I like having kind of the statues everywhere. I like gargoyles, though that's not really from Rome. That's later, but yeah, the T-posing Jesus statue. So I was saying, what about brutalism? I like that for science fiction movies. I don't know if I'd really like it in just real life so much. Have you seen the giant moving Gundam statues? I guess I haven't, but yeah, I guess on the flip side, I guess, I mean, maybe it has another origin, but from American standpoint, even though it's kind of gaudy, I do like kind of the amusement parks in general, where they're kind of make themes of everything, and you know, it's kind of tacky, but I like it also. You know, let's see, what are some other aesthetics I like? Yeah, and somebody's mentioned the Zany Golf episode where, yeah, I do find a lot of modern architecture pretty bland. I'm trying to just think in other countries that, yeah, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm drawing a blank on a lot of others, or else I need to. You know what I found is, like, in a lot of countries, there can be kind of, I guess China can have some interesting stuff too, especially with their cities. Some of what I associate with China isn't even their culture; it's just their geography, like the I forget what they're called, but like those mountains that just sort of jut out of the ground. But China can have some interesting architecture too, that I like a lot. Yeah, well, foods, yeah, foods can expand to a lot of different ones. Even if I'm like for example, I'm not really crazy about a lot of like Mexican themes, so I guess I do kind of like Day of the Dead stuff. But Mexican food, I mean, you could almost pick them at random, and I might like it. Yeah, foods are why. I guess that'd be probably more of an inverse with Japan, since seafood isn't, like, fish has never been my favorite, and sushi I think technically is vinegared rice, and I just hate vinegar. So yeah, I'm not a sushi fan. But well, okay, I'm just kind of bouncing around now. But yeah, even again, all this stuff doesn't necessarily. That's only one element of their culture. That's just kind of like a surface. So their food and their architecture may not communicate much about the culture's values, and I don't feel qualified to comment on much of that. So. You've talked about your dislike for animating before. If you were given the necessary funding and resources, would you choose to make your movie live action? I could do either one. It's just I don't want to be the one doing the animation. Is the thing. I kind of like the look of animated videos. It's just making them can be hell. But yeah, if live action was the only option on the table, we would need some CGI for some effects, and yeah, for much. There would be some destruction. Yeah, it's almost like an inverse as to what's easy or not, because with live action, getting facial expressions from actors or tone, that's easy comparatively. Whereas that can be a lot of work with animated. Whereas destroying a building, that's a lot easier for animated. Whereas that's a big deal for live action, you know, or creatures, you know, that look good. It's like an inverse relationship, but the bulk of it would be kind of character development and plot lines. So the bulk of it wouldn't be the special effects. Although since it's medieval fantasy setting, that's kind of a budget in itself you need for that. So yeah, that would be. Though you could probably do medieval fantasy on the cheap if you did it right, you know. What is your creative process like? And they're asking about like with Game Dungeon, do I make clips or whole multi-hour recording sessions when I play? Do you write the script after finishing the game or after play sessions? I've done both. It just depends on the episode, which feels like it might be a better fit for it. Like with Culpa Innata, it was I recorded most of it. I cut out lots of chunks I knew weren't going to be shown, like me taking 20 minutes to solve a puzzle or something like that, you know. You know, before I delete the footage, I might actually go through and time just how much footage, just how much time was devoted just to gossiping. Like, I'm certain it's over an hour. I think it might be multiple hours. Because I can probably just go through the footage. Okay, we did it for 35 in that segment. Okay, we did it for 20 in this segment. I just got to total them. So I might do that before I get rid of the footage, because I'm curious now. Oh yeah, and if you want a bonus, I'll put this down in the, I self-censored part of that episode because I thought, YouTube might come after me. I wanted to show a clip of people having a fight in a football stadium parking lot over football, because I thought it would have gone great with it. But then I was looking, that fight was marked as, like, you know, for 18 over. I was thinking, I want to put this clip in, but I don't want to risk getting the marked for 18, so I left it out. And the thing is, the fight is not that brutal at all. It's more, and I could have cut it to just, like, you know, people swinging at each other and missing and just having like a grab or something. It would have gotten the message across just fine with that. But I was thinking, this is gonna flag. Maybe some AI is gonna see this and match it and say, like, nope, your whole video needs to be 18 and older now. Then something, damn it, you know. So I figure I put so much time into that episode, I didn't want to risk it. But I'll link to the video clip I wanted to show. It was a fight between the Browns fans. And it's an awesome fight. It's entertaining. So. And again, it's not overly brutal at all. Like, it's, because some fights are really brutal, and I can see where you want to put that. This is like, I would call this like one step above like people wrestling and screwing around, where like the intent to fight was sincere, but there were a couple punches landed, but it's, you know, I feel like the climate on YouTube's gotten stricter. So I'm trying to like color between the lines on it. That was the only part I censored from it. It had everything else I wanted. Let's see. So he's asking for Freeman's mind how I imitate being underwater, gasping for air, choking, vomiting, and all the other things he goes through so effectively. I just try to recreate what it sounds like. I mean, the thing is, I don't really know exactly how to answer that, because it's like saying, like, say somebody's a good voice impersonator. Like, how do you impersonate Christopher Walken? It's like, well, you just try to figure out what sounds like him, you know? It's kind of like that. So it's not really a conscious process so much. But I am familiar with how all those sounds sound in reality, so I try to mimic that. Yeah. Okay, some stop killing game questions I already covered. What country do you think is the closest to achieving a successful, promising socioeconomic model? None of them. I feel like every country I know of is probably unsustainable to one degree or another. Like, the problem's that bad. So, I mean, and the thing is, some models aren't going to work for different cultures without major upheaval. I think we're overextended in basically all I know of. There might be some Central American ones that are doing it well, maybe, because this is just one metric, and it could be they're missing the mark on others. But I remember hearing, like, for the Paris Climate Accord, which I thought was a joke to begin with, for, I mean, how not the intention, but that the lack of enforcement, and that this is not going to be met. Like, I feel like there was no seriousness on actually meeting it. However, I think one country did meet it, and I think it was Costa Rica. So the fact that they were able to do that I think I may have heard of some things like Cuba has done before, like because they had trade embargoes, so they had to like really kind of get creative with managing their country. And like one I know of is like they've been real big on like preventative medicine because they couldn't afford to be able to have uh, to have like healthcare on the scale many other nations do, whereas preventative medicine can be a lot cheaper for extending lifespans of people. So yeah, so maybe some Central American countries have some things to learn from there. But yeah, I don't know of any that just are sustainable. Like because like let's say you're doing lots of things right in your country, but you're still overfishing, or you're still like deforesting your country at a higher rate, and so it's like eventually that catches up. So. Uh, let's see. How did you get in contact with the composers I've contacted in the past? Well, I just tried to find their email at the time, but this was years back that I did it. Yeah, I also got in touch with, who was, he did the soundtrack to Descent Free Space because there was music I was trying to get in that, but that ended up getting released higher quality anyway. Something like Wendell. I'm drawing a blank on his name. I bet somebody in the credits, somebody in the chat will know who I'm talking about. But yeah, I got in touch with him, Zach Bellica. Oh no, I've literally talked to him and I'm forgetting his name. The composer of Phantasmagoria, Robert Holmes, I think. Yeah, Phantasmagoria too. I may have contacted a few others where I was trying to hunt down the soundtracks, but I think I contacted them, but I didn't get a response. I think for Bill Brown, who did some of the music for Quake 2. But yeah, it's just try your luck, I guess. You might have better luck because unless it's like you'll probably have decent luck because if they're a real famous name in the industry, then a lot of their music probably already is out in CD quality or something similar. Gary Spinnerd, oh man, you're right. Robert Holmes is Gabriel Knight. Damn it. So yeah, well, I think he'll forgive me. Yes, Gary Spinrad. Oh, yes, I'm mixing up composer names. But so if they're really big, like say, was it Martin O'Donnell? That's a big name, or Jeremy Soule. That's a real big name. The odds are maybe not their old stuff, but a lot of their stuff will probably be in like a CD quality or something similar. Whereas if they're kind of like off the beaten path, but you like the music, you might be able to hunt them down because maybe they never got much fame, so they're not getting bombarded by emails or Twitter messages or something. So they're probably happy to talk to you about it. And maybe they have a copy of a higher quality copy of it lying around. But that's less of an issue than it used to be because, a high quality MP3 or Ogg Vorbis is just miles apart from like the old crappy 22 kilohertz compressed waves that we used to get back in the late 90s. Okay. Well, somebody's asking what my favorite story is, and I don't know. I might go, and I'm sure I can always think of something better later. But I mean, if we're just going by my first impulse, two came to mind, and they both involve time travel paradoxes. So I guess that's where my brain's at for favorite stuff. The one I don't know the name of it. I mentioned it I think on the last video chat about the guy who goes to the future and then finds the butterflies, then comes back, and then that's changed thing. It is not a Sound of Thunder by Ray Bradbury. That's a different time travel story with butterflies. This is kind of the opposite of that. An even bigger paradox, really. I forget the name of the story, though.
Okay, somebody said I should read Reverend Insanity. All right, I'll write that down. And the other one that came to mind, which it's kind of cheesy in some ways, but it has an awesome paradox in it, would be kind of the Legacy of Kain series, and it kind of it gets to the really good stuff story wise, and Soul Reaver too. And the rest of it is just, it's pretty good and I like it. And I would hardly call it like a classic of literature, but I personally I think the rest of the story is on the level where it's like, yeah, I know this is kind of corny in some ways, but I like it anyway. But then the time traveling aspect of it just gets to be awesome. It has such a great twist in it that I won't spoil it here if you haven't played through the series, but the twist is revealed in Soul Reaver 2, and it builds off of stuff that was in it from game one. I was just, yeah. I mentioned in Culpa Innata, I like the blow your mind stuff. They were going for blow your mind twist in that, so I like that. Let's see. Do you consider yourself a celebrity or similar term? I mean, no. I have some recognition among some circles on the internet, I guess is the best I can do. I certainly don't have a celebrity lifestyle. I mean, I still have to rent my apartment. You know, I don't know if I'll end up having retirement or not. I mean, I hope someday to eventually have a home, but I don't know if that's the sort of thing where house prices are just going to go up forever, or maybe they will crash eventually and becomes an affordable thing. And it's like, I don't have a bodyguard or anything like that. So like, I don't have a car. So I don't think I really have like this kind of like rock star lifestyle that you'd expect for somebody if you think of a celebrity, you know. Celebrities have a lot you usually think of them having kind of like handlers and people who can help them with all sorts of things. Well, I do seek out and get volunteer or else low paid help on a few things. It's like definitely not with my personal life, really. It's usually specifically about the videos, you know, getting help with volume balancing, or like in the last one, help getting rid of the film grain on the game. Or so I'd say that is a privilege I do have, is that if I give an SOS out to some technical stuff or sometimes off the beaten path topics, I have a decent chance of getting a reply on it. Like I'm thinking in like the Sonic Heroes episode, someone came through as to estimating the heights as to all for each level how high Sonic is, and each I'll bring that up in the follow-up episode on that. So I can sometimes get help on that level, but that's a good term. There's somebody saying Rich Evans described it well as Z-list celebrity. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, I might be a Z-list celebrity. That the benefits are pretty minimal, but there are some topic things. Like I feel like the thing I feel that I'm a celebrity on compared to life before having any recognition the most is like if you have a technical problem or there's some like niche interest that before your only choice was to go to some forum and hope there's somebody out there that sees this, that they can give help with me. And now I feel like I can press on the damn scales for stuff like that. So if I have an anti-aliasing problem for this kind of hardware, no, I can maybe get some help on that. Or trying to extract files or music from a game. It's like, no, I can get some help on that too if my own research is not enough. Like I have decent odds on that. That's the one area I feel like that, yeah, this feels like I have some actual frigging power here, that being able to pursue these weird niche interests on a more effective degree. So yeah, that's like the one area I really do feel the difference. Like I don't have to roll the dice and rely on this fringe issue. Like when I got, like I mentioned, like the Linux help earlier, or I think we actually have gotten help
just recently too, like a month ago. It's after multiple people looking at it, extracting the videos to Conquest Earth. So we'll be able to. So if I do a follow up, I'll have to show the extra clips. I haven't even seen them yet. So yeah, stuff like that. This real kind of fringe stuff, but I have an interest in, and some other people out there either have an interest in it or they consider this an interesting enough puzzle for them to get their interest on it. So yeah, I think that's Z-list celebrity. I'll take that. That sounds about right. So I was asking, how am I doing? I'm still a bit frazzled just from working so many hours, but it was better yesterday. It was better today, and I'm gonna take a break soon. I swear. Like I am just hungry to like play more games. Like I would estimate. Okay, I think over like the past maybe 4 months, I've gotten maybe 10 hours of gaming, something like that. It's been like nothing. So, like, yeah, I'm finding myself really wanting to play a lot more. Kind of go through my list. Was there a lot of hesitation before your first on-camera appearance? A little bit, because I had the feeling that if I showed my face, then everybody's going to be like, and then stop watching Freeman's Mind at the time. So after I finished Freeman's Mind, I was less hesitant about it. So I figured, yeah, okay, I'll just... Although there was like some small interview they asked me for from Machinima at the time that might still be up somewhere. That was before that. So, I mean, yeah, I can show my face if people wanted to, but Freeman, my fan base didn't collapse from that, so that's good. Good measure on that. Did you ever figure out what Hammond, Swiss, and Rye means? I haven't. I still don't know what down with the DSP means either. So, you ever figure it out? See, that's the risk of like small games like that are kind of off the beaten path. I'd say there's a decent chance that might be an inside joke that only he and 5 other people know about. So we may never figure it out. Okay. Oh yeah, this is a decent question. What's your opinion on gacha games like Fate Grand Order, Azur Lane, and Genshin? Games that are basically designed to get the players to spend money on them consistently for the chance of better units, upgrades, mats, etc. And will most definitely eventually shut down closing off the player accounts, despite some extreme whales having spent tens of thousands of dollars on their accounts. Well, 2 basic thoughts on that. One, this of course is a candidate for, what we're trying to do is stop killing games because, yeah, I mean, that's just as exploitive as it gets, And, well, I guess 3 thoughts. Another one is, speaking personally, not for the campaign, yeah, I think that stuff's awful. And I think that's extremely predatory. And I kind of wish games wouldn't be made like that. But I don't have enough of a horse in that race myself to launch some campaign against that. And that would be a more existential risk for some aspects of the industry that are making money hand over fist from that kind of behavior. I mean, I think you're preying on people doing that. But I'm not the only one who thinks that, thankfully. And there have been that's what kind of the loot box stuff was about. And that, I guess, except for Belgium, and even then I think it had some trouble, that kind of fell flat. However, we might see Australia take a second shot at loot boxes from that article I linked to a while back from Kotaku. It sounds like the ACCC wants to take a second look at that and like that exact thing, predatory behavior, gambling things. So, hey, we might get Australia coming to save the day on that. However, that's something, see, unlike end-of-life plans, that's something they will fight every step of the way. Like, even if they lose in Australia, they will still try to push it everywhere else they can because that's millions, if not billions of dollars for the industry. So it's like, if we lose there, well, then it's still hella profitable to have it everywhere else, and just
Whereas if they lose on an end of life plan, so they're gonna have to make it if they don't want to miss the sale. It's like, yeah, well, whatever. We'll just release it, then we're done with the game. We don't have to touch it again. So, yeah, you might really have to fight that country by country or state by state or whatever, however it is, because there's such financial incentive against it. Yeah, and also these types of games, like, I'm not sure I've ever even played a gacha game. Those tend to be like more cutesy anime type stuff, which is on the other end of the spectrum of what I tend to play. So I don't know about it, but of course I don't want people who do enjoy those games getting ripped off. You know, and if they want to keep their game, of course they should be able to keep their game. So yeah, I don't like the whale model at all. I think a lot of gamers don't like it, but man, look, just not excuse me, not having the game destroyed took about as much as it can out of me on this. I have the most I will do is if somebody else does a campaign on this and I think they have a chance. In other words, I don't think it's hopeless. I'll give them a shout out, sure. But beyond that, I mean, no, I don't have the energy for this. I mean, or I have too many other things I want to do with my life. So this is kind of it for me as far as consumer action, I'm afraid. I'm certainly sympathetic to many other consumer issues. It's just they don't disturb me on the same level. However, I also say that as someone who is not a gambling addict. If I was or knew somebody personally was, I could see where this could affect you way more personally. And yeah, I am behind you that you do have the right to get offended by it and want to ban it. And this is highly exploitive. It's just I don't have the energy to cover that and what we're doing. So yeah, it's, but like this, if you had your own petition I qualified for and I thought it would do something, I would sign it, okay? So it's, like I would do the kind of bare minimum I'd be hoping for. Or if I had a game that did fall under this category, even if I never bought any of the microtransactions, if that would help your campaign and I thought you had a shot at it, I would send my complaint to the Consumer Protection Agency. So I would be willing to do the reverse for your movement that I'm trying to ask people to do for the one I'm doing. I would leave it at that, but I wouldn't be spearheading your campaign. So that's a whole other level. Let's see. I mean, I didn't even want to do this one. Did you get into contact with Running with Scissors at all for them to make that amazing picture of you holding up the petition? No, that was 100% their own initiative. I didn't even know about it till they did it. So. Okay, I'm skipping some I've had before. Let's see. Yeah, and someone's asking, the same person is asking several questions, so I'm feeling less compelled to answer a lot of them. Let's see. Oh, okay, I'll answer this quick. Are you planning to make another video of your own personally anticipated games like you did several years ago? No, because it's too big. That's what the games list on the website is about now. Yeah, I made a video on that too, like Ross's big games list or something like that. But yeah, I have a backlog of those I need to add there. There's probably another 30 entries coming. I add them every few months, something like that. Although I've been awful about updating which ones I played and putting ratings on all of them because I'm just like, whatever. Like, maybe if I get more free time, I'll go in through and update all those. And also, if I get more free time, I might do that thing where I put my top 3 or top 5 games per year and have a list on that if people are curious. Oh yeah, this was interesting. I wasn't sure how to answer this one. Have you ever worked somewhere that you were praised for doing exactly what you were trained to do?
And I want to say no. I don't think I was. I mean, maybe I'm forgetting it, but I can't remember any instance of being praised at my job. However, I did kind of remember a compliment when I was a kitchen steward that the cooks there were happier with me washing the dishes than a lot of the others because I was getting them cleaner. And I was just kind of going by it. Like, I don't know, I kind of wash dishes a lot by feel. So if I can kind of still feel like the grease or the grime on there, I feel like I need to kind of get it cleaner. So they liked how I wash dishes. So that's the only one I remember. Let's see. Oh yeah, and the other one was, what are your thoughts on the U.S. Constitution? I mean, it's we'll see how it's a worthwhile experiment. We'll see how it does. You know, and that's another good example of the law being broad. Yeah, I realized a lot of people were saying, man, I might have even gotten spun around or bought into that myself. When they were saying this is vague, it's like, well, no, we're saying it depends on how you look at it, because we're saying, no, we want to require publishers to include an end-of-life plan, or else there will be penalties from the government. I mean, that's broad, but I'm not sure that's that vague, actually. Because, now, if you want to get into the specifics, yeah, but I mean, the Constitution is full of things like that. You know, like you know, your right to speech and assembly shall not be infringed, or you know, can't quarter troops in your home. I mean, that's pretty specific. I mean, that's pretty clear. I mean, the specificities of it. I might be saying that wrong. Yeah, it doesn't cover that. Or you know, being necessary to regulate militia right to bear arms, or protection against unreasonable search and seizure. That is hardly specific, but that's broad, and I mean, it gets the message across, you know, so it's on that level. Let's see. Some of their favorite jokes in Ross's Game Dungeon are the ones that verge slightly into chaos, and the examples of Quadrillion where the dogs start barking, and Dreamcast entering the ring and Trixel. Are there any direct inspirations for this kind of humor? And those they just came to me. I don't know. I'd love to have more of that sort of thing. But it has to sort of come to me. And I will say, the more time pressure I have, usually the less likely it happens. So me being able to slow down slightly and have a break, I think will benefit whatever the next one is. So. Are you into board games at all? It's been a while since I played them. I mean, I definitely as a kid, but yeah, I guess you kind of need I guess I don't like them as much as I used to, but I don't know. Like, I could see the right one if it's like a social. If it was a social thing, I could definitely see doing board games again. I think the big thing that happened compared to like now versus as a kid is I see the possibilities more. And like I see like almost every which way this could go. And unless there's like really good social dynamics that come from it, it's not as interesting. And also I see, like, my brain automatically determines now what's luck and what's not. So I think the board games I like more are a little more psychological, or that have the aspects of them that are more psychological. Like it's not a board game, but like the card game, BS, the abbreviation. That's one where in order to win the game, you basically have to lie about what's in your hand. And that's an interesting element. So that would still have an element to me. And I would do these tricks like, see, I'm only an okay liar for like if I'm practicing, but I am awesome at telling the truth and making it sound like a lie. So I could lay out traps for people. So I could go like, okay, 2 7s. And people would fall for that. Man, I could bait people. So yeah, I'm awesome at telling the truth and making it sound like I'm telling a lie. And also I would do sneaky stuff where, you know, the idea is to get rid of all your cards. So you try to get rid of more than you have. And you have to put in a card whether you have that card or not. And like one thing I would do is like, let's say I say I'm putting in 2 3s, but I'm trying to get as many cards in as possible. So I would stuff a king. I would fan out the cards and stuff a king underneath that and try to put that in there. And so that way, if they try to call the bluff, you can just hold up the 2 3s and hope they don't notice the king. Yeah, I guess if you don't know the rules, this doesn't make sense. But the point is, you could kind of get away with more stuff. So if there's like an element of deception, that can make a game very interesting. Or with Monopoly. Monopoly is like 100% luck except for the deals. So it's all about the deals. Or I mean, you can have, there's a little bit of strategy, but in general, you're generally not going to go wrong by buying everything you land on. But the real strategy, but you know, once you get into deals, then you can kind of haggle with people and figure out like who's more psychologically open to this. Or one thing I would notice is some people will be obsessed with like waterworks and utilities. And I would always do the math with like, well, the gains on that aren't that big. If I have one of those and I can trade it in for a property I need to get a monopoly, that is so worth it. And I know that player really likes those. So I'll do that, maybe throw in some cash. I bet I can get that. So yeah, that keeps it interesting, you know, having that psychological element to board games. So, and there's so many board games now. I just don't have enough like of regular people I see to play them is the problem. So, but yeah, I think my tastes have shifted, but I still like. Or another game I used to like. I'm not. I don't even know. I might even get in trouble saying the title of it, so I don't know what the. But the idea was, it's similar to War, which is 100% luck. It's a card game where you just flip out cards and then until you get a match. Except it involves reflexes. So when you get a match, the first person to slap the table gets all the cards and the winnings. So it becomes a reflexes game, and that kind of keeps it interesting also. Yeah, the person has the right abbreviation there. Yeah, again, like YouTube has had a bit of a chilling effect on what I say. Thankfully, it's not affecting the stuff I most care about, what I want to say, but there is a little bit of that. So, okay, lost my place. Okay, somebody's saying, okay, real quick, my current thoughts on AI. I'm still super interested in narrow AI, which is stuff like and I think it has a lot of potential. So like I have my wish list of multimedia stuff I want, like removing voice or removing laugh tracks or the dream software, you know, stitching together maps from footage or so stuff that's really about extrapolating patterns. I would love to have an AI do my voice balancing. Sorry to Master in the chat if he's watching. Not because I don't like his help, but because I just hate doing it. And, he's been doing a pretty decent job, but AI might be able to do it even better. But also, I think AI is going to be awesome for like medical breakthroughs, like being able to detect cancer cells like way before what doctors could, or other problems. Or I heard of one use for it about using agriculture, where they were going to hook it up to like a camera feed and train the AI to distinguish between what's a crop versus what's a weed. I might have mentioned this already. And that sounds like an awesome use of AI because, yeah, it won't be 100% accurate, but if it's like 97% accurate, well, that's going to save an incredible amount of time and work. And not fun work either, about weeding crops, you know? So, and you can maybe even save more on pesticides and stuff like that. So I think that's all kind of narrow focus AI, and I think that's where all the potential is. For large language model stuff, like with language, I mean, I guess a lot of it's built off of that, but I don't know. I mean, it doesn't have much use for me personally, but maybe if you're like a programmer, this can automate more of your workload or something. I could see some use for that, but it's, I don't know. Like the chatbots and stuff, that doesn't really do anything for me, especially when it gets answers wrong. So I don't know. Maybe I'm missing the train on that, but and with image generation, I mean, it was more neat at the beginning, but now I've gotten kind of sick of that style. Like I don't really like it anymore. I really prefer kind of like hand drawn and hand painted stuff. Or I mean, it can be tool assisted. When I say hand, if you're using Photoshop but it still looks like it was done by hand, that's fine. But the AI art has like kind of a uncanny valley feeling for me that I don't like. Okay, I'm skipping some questions. They're saying why most of my Game Dutch episodes about games are pre-2000. Well, the early ones, I didn't have the recording set up to have a decent frame rate for higher resolution stuff, so that kind of held me back and made me gravitate towards DOS games. Since then, I'm not sure it's all pre-2000, though I honestly don't know what the next Game Dutch is going to be, but it probably will be a pre-2000 one. I mean, I've done modern ones like The Crew, The Division, less modern now, but The Secret World. So, I mean, it just, I guess with modern ones, well, I did the Deus Ex games, or before Mankind Divided. With the modern ones, the likelihood that I have something to say that others haven't said already becomes much lower. So to me, that means they probably won't make as good an episode, but you never know. It's... Okay, I'm going to skip more questions now. So a couple of these have been added. Okay, well, I'll answer this one. Will Game Dungeon ever go back to the old showcase and shorter style video? Yes. I never meant for it to spiral as out of control as it got with Culpa Innata, but whatever. That wasn't the plan. That wasn't the plan. Okay, so I was asking, I was born in Louisiana. I live in Poland. I grew up in Virginia, but I lived multiple places after growing up. I lived in Tennessee, Pennsylvania, Louisiana again, and California when I was working at Machinima. Let's see if I live anywhere else. I've driven through several states, but I think those are the only ones I lived in for a while. Somebody's asking about a reference in the Modern Major General episode that has some language. I usually try to keep the Twitch streams kind of without having to hit the mature rating. So just to answer their question, I was unaware of the extra obscenity reference there was to the U.S. military. So, oops, let's see, did I skip it? Okay. So I was asking if I like story-based games by Hideo Kojima. Well, I'm only familiar with a couple because I mentioned Metal Gear Solid and Death Stranding. So I've watched a full playthrough of the first Metal Gear Solid. I'm aware of the twist in the second, but I need to watch a playthrough on that one. The third one I don't know anything about, except I think it's in the past. And it's in the jungle, so I'm kind of curious about that one. The fourth one, I barely know anything except Snake's old or he's aging prematurely. And the fourth one, like, apparently is notorious for the sheer volume of cutscenes. So that's interesting. And I think I remember seeing a comment of somebody saying that Revolver Ocelot is a quadruple or possibly a quintuple agent. So that made me kind of curious about that. 5 I've heard is pretty good, but it takes place in the desert, so I'm not that interested in that one. I think that's another one in the past. And And a lot of people say Metal Gear Survive is bad, and yeah, that's not Hideo Kojima at that point. For Death Stranding, I did watch, I played some of it, and that one was kind of, I played it like an hour or two, and that one was kind of frustrating because that strikes me as a game I think I would definitely like with enough mods. But as it stands, it felt too much like work. Like, I like the idea of like this kind of messenger with excuses to sort of explore the landscape, and maybe you can kind of develop the areas that you're traveling to make it easier. So you might start off on rough terrain, but then you could like build a bridge or, you know, paved area to accelerate that with your resources. I was thinking, oh yeah, I kind of like this idea. Like, and then a plot unfolding as you expand out. But what I didn't like, okay, you might hear sirens. I don't know. I have the window open so I don't overheat here. What I didn't like was the invisible enemies and really needing to pay attention to how you walk. Like, okay, you know, balance this direction. Okay, keep it. You know, it felt. It's one of those things where are you looking more for entertainment or realism? And I'm more on the entertainment side. Realism does help with the immersion, and some people prefer that, but for that game, I didn't. And even that, it's Death Stranding was kind of a mix. Yeah, okay. You had the invisible enemies. What were the other things? I couldn't tell if it was the level of complexity with your inventory and oh yeah, your defenses weren't so hot, and I didn't like that from what I saw. But I couldn't tell if it was the mix of like the complexity I like or just more complexity than I want to deal with. Yeah, I guess I don't like stuff that's like constant things you need to. Yeah, I guess there's the complexity. I don't know, because I'm thinking like in a strategy game, you have to constantly kind of like feed your population sometimes or develop metal and kind of get your supply chains going. And I don't mind that, but I don't like in Death Stranding, you had to like monitor like your equipment to make sure like the aging rain doesn't like corrode it. And that's kind of like a maintenance thing. And I didn't really like that aspect of it. And I'm wondering if that's different from like the stuff that you are kind of building. I think it's a little different because with the stuff I'm talking about, like feeding your population or harvesting enough metal, usually that's something where it's a complexity layer you need to get going, but then once it's going, you don't need to worry about it unless you're doing more expansion. Then you need to revisit it or something like that. So it's like you start it up and then it takes care of itself. You start it up and then it takes care of itself. I like stuff like that. Whereas this is sort of like, no, you're going to have to keep babysitting, you know, making sure your stuff isn't corroding or stuff. And I don't really like that element. Like I kind of associate that with kind of like pet games where, you know, you need to feed your virtual pet or give it water. I don't like that crap at all. So I'm also not a big fan of like hunger and thirst meters that tick down in games, you know. I don't mind that stuff if it's like a resource management, like, you know, you need to find so many pounds of food within the week or else you're going to starve. So it's like an incentive to keep you going. But I don't mind that. But if it's like, okay, 10 minutes have passed, now you're starving. It's like, yeah, I don't like that. Real time have passed, you know. But also with Death Stranding, I think it had a lot of creativity, but it's not quite my thing. Like there were two elements that I didn't really like. One is they kind of go with these kind of like disturbing images in a way that's not quite my thing, like the fetuses and the sort of like personal tragedy horror kind of stuff. That's not really my thing. And the other thing I didn't really like is it's one of these games where you're never sure like what the hell's going on, even after you've beaten the game. And again, I'm cool with some mystery, but I like some grounding. But I really love the idea of like another plane of existence and monsters coming in and we're not sure what's going on there and we're just trying to adapt. But it kind of went into other directions I wasn't quite my thing, but it's an extremely creative game. You know, it's not trying to go after. I'm not trying to knock it for that, but it's like I can be sometimes kind of lowbrow in games where I like the entertainment side of it, and you know, did I have a good time? You know, at the end of it, and it feels more like it leans. In some ways, I feel like Death Stranding might be one of the biggest budget art film games that's ever been made. It kind of has that feel, like a big budget art film movie, you know? Yeah, the graphics are pretty amazing too. Like that has some of the best, that has some of like the most realistic looking people I've seen in a game. Though I guess we're catching up on that in several games. Okay. I'll get to a few more. Oh shoot, I lost my spot. Okay, let's see. Kojima, I'll do a search. There we go. Okay. Oh, have I played any more of the games on the most anticipated games list video? Yes, but I forget which ones. I have to look at a list. And there was a minor update in the games list video, but I've played more of them since then also. Oh yeah, this is a fun question. What if you actually started seeing an all-black car parked outside your place? Maybe you check your mail and a group of men approach you and warn you about continuing your campaign against killing games. Would you listen to them? Would you give us subtle hints and trust us pick up the pieces? Or you just come out with it publicly as you can? I probably would come out with it publicly. However, I'm not too worried about that because the entire campaign has been in such a way that the longer it goes on, the less important I am to it. Like right now, I could disappear and 90% of it still continues. Like I don't, like right now, I think the only things I have left are increasing our odds on the European Citizens Initiative, which might still fall. Who knows? But I'm trying to like increase our margins. That my presence helps with that, and taking a second try at the UK because that just got turned upside down, the entire thing. Everything else is kind of underway, and it's going to go off with or without me. So I mean, even the Citizens Initiative, if it gets the signatures, it's going to go off without me. So, yeah, there wouldn't be much point at this point. But I guess so it's harder for me to evaluate this now that this is like 80 to 90% done on my end. It's because it's like, well, yeah, okay, if you want to shut me up with threats, then okay, I don't have much to lose at this point anyway. I think but if it was beforehand, I think I would try to be public about it, and if that didn't work, I think I would try to convince them, like, guys, is there any way we can do this more carrot rather than stick? Because, like, hey, maybe you can give me retirement, and I can just make some vague statement saying I had to stop and I can't talk about it for anyone. Like, you know, it's like I would look at that. Look, if they're coming after me to like take me out anyway, maybe look, that sounds like a prime opportunity to sell out once because it's like, yeah, maybe like I want the equivalent of like, I'm thinking of in Happy Gilmore, how he gets that card where he gets free subs for life. Yeah, maybe they could kind of sweeten the deal with something like that, you know, or free lodging, or you know, like that's what I would want to kind of bribe me. So, but I'm saying this with this already mostly done now. I mean, obviously the results aren't mostly done; those could take a long time, but the initiative, the vast majority is underway. So I don't know. I was never too worried about that. Yeah, I guess now it's safer to reveal. Okay, well, wait. Let me think. Is this gonna give them any like undue advantage? Yeah, I guess. Okay, it's safe enough to reveal. What I was worried about was Ubisoft like the day before the shutdown, either like extending it for the crew or offering everybody a free game. Or I was getting, because that would have just kicked the stool out of things. But now that, look, it's underway. They could still do that, but it's not gonna change the judgment on it. So, and I don't think they're gonna do it. So that's good. I was worried about that, like prior to April. Man, I was thinking, oh man, don't, because yeah, if they extended it, that would have just killed a lot of the momentum. And then if they had offered everybody compensation, that would have muddied the waters for trying to get action taken. Because that was the problem with Overwatch. That, yeah, they killed it. People pay money for it, but they gave you Overwatch 2 for free and some bonus features. So just a judge looking at that was saying, well, good enough. And then we still go back to killing games, and then we haven't really tested this. So. See, somebody's saying if they think it gets to 500,000, there's a good chance it'll pass. I have no such confidence. I could see this. I see this like a declining exponential curve with some bumps. And the thing is, once you're on the decline phase, that can decline to almost nothing, or it can remain on that low level for a really long time. So. But yeah, I think I would try to spin them as, let's have more carrot, less stick if you're trying to get me to stop. Yes. Okay, I'm just skipping a few more. What's the best way to prepare an egg? I don't know. I usually just prefer scrambled or poached. But I mean, that's something where there's 50 different ways of making eggs. It's just like, I guess they can taste a little differently, but I just have a whatever. I like the taste of scrambled or poached the most. Okay. Okay, I kind of answered this one. Okay, Gorilla Gong kind of fell through it. I didn't have, somebody else was going to kind of take it over, but both me and the other person got too busy to handle it. So it was kind of a failed experiment. If climate change keeps getting worse and worse, what countries, territories would you consider the most safe to live the long term? Boy, this is I don't know. This is probably something you would want to, the reason, okay, well, definitely not the equator. But the thing is, you would think okay, really far north, and maybe, but then I'm thinking of that town in Canada that caught on fire because it was so hot and just burned down. I forget the name of it. I'll have a link to that just to prove I'm not making this up. Canada town. So and that was farther up from the equator than the United States. So I was saying it was Jasper. I thought it was a different name, but yeah, it set records for how hot it got. So I don't know. I think I've even heard of Siberia having some real high records in the summer before. It could just be a zone where it's even though it's overall cold, they can still have crazy extremes. So I have no idea. Lately, I'm thinking less about that and more about where should you flee to for if nuclear warfare broke out. And that would be somewhere in the southern hemisphere, I would think, because the wind currents wouldn't cross. So you have more time to figure out global warming. With nuclear stuff, maybe you have all the time in the world, or maybe you don't at all. So it's, yeah, give peace a chance on that. Okay, any more? Oh, okay, I missed this one. I'll answer it quick. What will happen with subscription-only games that also have expansions that you can straight up purchase? That is the deepest of gray areas I'm not sure of, because I could see the argument that the expansion is just considered an upgrade to the service, because even if you buy the expansion, you still know it's going to end after 30 days or 60 days. But at the same time, if they're still selling it as an expansion, that's kind of the same way you sell goods. So my guess is, assuming subscription games get a pass because there's not enough precedent or similarity in the law for that to work under consumer. I know Europe doesn't work on precedents, but the point is they do look at other policies and try to form new policies that are kind of in line in that, is what I mean. So assuming subscriptions get a free pass, what that would mean is I think they might have short-term penalties for that. And that's the sort of thing that they really could get around with rewording of how these expansions are sold. So they stop selling them as expansions and they sell them as upgrade to your World of Warcraft account or to your Final Fantasy account. So they start calling expansions upgrades. And that might satisfy the requirement. That's like a rare exception where just changing the language might do it. Again, it's a rare instance, but I think that's one where we might not be able to win that one. Again, it's one I would like to win, but I'm not sure if we can handle that one. But again, it's only a handful of games that are doing subscription only these days. So that's something we do have going for us. Or maybe they get lumped in under other microtransactions too. You never know. So, what are your thoughts on the flat screen to VR studio? If you don't know about them, they're a studio that's semi-officially ports existing games to VR. I think that is awesome. And for everybody talking about VR games needing a killer app, there's your killer app. Like, I mean, for me, because it's a different experience seeing it in VR, guys. Even games it is a different experience. Again, I always compare it to the difference between watching a movie versus actually going to where it was filmed. You know, it's about like that. Oh, I didn't see this one. They're asking if I was new Python, what would I create in Python? Man, probably stuff on my AI list. Maybe automate some stuff or GUI enhancements. Or maybe game file scanners. Yeah, I should put up my wish list of like other multimedia AI stuff I want sometime. I mentioned some of it before, but it's the sort of thing where I don't always know until I need it, you know? With the almost endless backlog of games and the decline of AAA gaming, do you think you could just play older games for the remainder of your life? Well, yes, I could, but I think the question is, would I be able to go? I mean, look, we could have a Carrington event as long as I survive. I can never play another video game again and still find something to occupy my life with, you know? But for games, I think the question is are there enough already that I'm never going to get to them at all? And my intuition says no. Okay, with clarifiers. No for all the games I'm personally interested in. Yes, there are enough games out there right now that you can never play them all in your lifetime. But like, I'm gonna skip almost all sports games. I'm gonna skip a huge number of turn-based combat games. Very huge number of kind of anime-ish games. I'm not really into that kind of thing. So I'm kind of like narrowing my scope, and like I said earlier, I can watch walkthroughs and skip through the tedious parts for games I'm interested in, but I don't think I'm gonna play them. Like I did earlier this year, like I watched Parasite Eve. I watched a playthrough of that, and I was never gonna play that game, but I was kind of curious about it, and I was able to get through that playthrough a hell of a lot faster than I would be if I had just played through it, legit. So, however, that said, for my list and all the games I'm interested in, it's going to take years. So I don't know how many years, but my intuition is telling me, no, I can get through all this, but it's going to take years. But yeah, besides, there's always the quality argument. because maybe some of these older games, I think, well, that looks like it's okay, but then the new game looks like, okay, this is it. I have to play this one eventually, you know. So, you know, you got to factor in the quality argument also. Okay, skipping a few more. Oh man, I didn't see that one. If aliens are invading and you have 1 year prep time, how would you prepare? God, that depends on the aliens. I guess I gotta go full long-term bunker. Act like it's gonna be, nuclear war coming, and try to get underground, stockpile it with as many like long-term supplies as I could. Like, you know, try to get people close to me, or maybe people who are like completely on board with this and I feel like are stable enough psychologically to see if they wanted to join me. Like try to have like a select club. You know what? If I'm the only one who knew it, I could almost announce it on the stream and everybody think, okay, Ross is crazy. And then that 1% who doesn't, I could probably pull from them. So, yeah, because, I mean, just kind of I wouldn't necessarily be preparing for like the Earth to be irradiated. I'd be preparing for a scenario where I may never be able to come up again. So we won't know. So in building a kind of fallout shelter, long term fallout shelter, you could do that. And I think I could probably do that because you could find cheap land. I could probably blow what existing savings I have on, like, you know, spending it the smart way. If you have a year to build, you could get a lot of things affordably. So yeah, you can pull it off, especially if you pooled resources with other people. So yeah, no, that's a good question. Okay, I'm skipping some more. Well, one guy was asking about me kind of predicting the end of things with just a Messiah. I don't know if I was predicting. I was just kind of making a joke on the Messiah video. And he thought that what do I think of that tying into the pandemic? Look, I think, not to be dismissive, but I think the pandemic is nothing compared to like what could happen to civilization. So, or even likely, yeah, I'm more worried. Okay, stuff like nuclear warfare, that's a wild card. It may happen, it may never happen. Stuff like environmental collapse, I think it's going to get very bad, but it's still at some point in the future, and I'm not sure how long it takes, and maybe we do wake up some and can adapt. Hard to say. One thing I think is like almost a certainty is, like, from Culpa Innata, the hyper depression. I don't see how we get out of that. All I see is just massive damage reduction if we're lucky. Like, everything strikes me as unsustainable. So, yeah, so the pandemic compared to all of that, it's just nothing. So, I mean, not to say it wasn't something and a big deal, but that's the speed bump, not the falling off a cliff, you know? I have not gotten the Project Zomboid yet, but maybe I will soon. Because that's pretty high up on my list. The only thing keeping me off it now is kind of the learning curve. But Cyberpunk's pretty close to the top of the list for me right now. I did get around to playing Assassin's Creed Unity, though I honestly can't remember if I gave up on it halfway and just watched the playthrough of the rest, or if I played through all of it. I just can't remember. Man, I'd have to like look up my save. See, that's the thing about doing these playthroughs, is sometimes they are good enough for the games. I really can't remember. I think I maybe did watch a playthrough for the end of it. But man, I don't know. I played through all of Rogue. Let's see. and I want to play through Syndicate. But yeah, yeah. But yeah, I went through the. I went through it. I don't think it really. I think they could have done a lot more with the French Revolution. But in terms of the story is very uninspired in my opinion. The recreation though is awesome. I mean, for showing 1700s Paris. In fact, that's something Ubisoft tends to do well consistently, is create really convincing worlds and then have real bland stories. Like, and kind of so-so gameplay in a lot of their games. Oh man, good questions. Warren Spector and IO Studios offer you a place as a writer on a brand new Deus Ex game. What suggestions would you bring to the table, if any? I would try to consult as many sort of future predictions as I could. Maybe some science fiction writers. But I mean, some big ones I would bring up would be the increased environmental strain. So like, let's take something like Soylent Green, but try to update it with modern technology and our best guesses as to how things might play out. So that would be an element. Media control would have to be a big one. Like, I'd love to, like, I think in a Deus Ex game, I would love to have what you're hearing on the news becomes completely different from what you're seeing on the ground. And sometimes it could even just be totally different topics, even though the stuff on the ground is way more important. But the news is covering some just sort of like minor topic that everybody's arguing about. I think that would have to be an element. And then you could even, I would have this as like an optional quest where you could go whistleblower if you want. And so it comes out in the news, but then only like these tiny like independent sources pick up the news or that you're cover, and like mainstream media just ignores it. Like I think that would be a nice touch, and just show, just try to paint a picture of like how much media is influencing the corrections in society. So yeah, like sort of a modernized Soylent Green. We you wouldn't have to go as extreme as that, but you could have things drifting in that direction. What are some other themes that I feel like are really? Yeah, I mean, maybe speculate where we are. Our best guess of where we're probably going to be with AI in whatever the setting, because that is kind of still kind of unexplored. I mean, Deus Ex kind of did that to begin with, but we could have it more granular, like stuff that we'll probably expect. Yeah, it's hard. Or hey, maybe hey, you could do this in a region. That would be a good way to do it in Deus Ex sequel. Have what I was talking about with the scaling down of oil, not because it was by choice, but because they had to, and then they're adapting. And your missions in that area feel very different in terms of how, like, the architecture and like the city planning and everything works out and how things function. It's like, wow, this is odd, Yeah, you could have one region like that, Let's see. Okay, any more? Oh yeah, there's another good question. Man, too many. Could you elaborate on your opinions about Doom level design? They said they find calling the levels mazes to be pretty reductive. You're right, but I don't know what the term is for what I want, because he was comparing that to Wolfenstein 3D, saying that's more like a maze. And Doom 1, they're saying, well, in the early ones, you don't really get lost. I got a little lost, I think, in some spots, but yeah, Wolfenstein 3D is more like the classic kind of traditional maze. Doom 1 is kind of like, or the early Doom games, a lot of Doom clones. It's just kind of like a level of abstractness to it that doesn't seem to resemble anything, or most parts of it don't resemble anything I can connect to in the real world. And it's not abstract in a way that I find kind of stylish and interesting and aesthetically pleasing. Because I think, Echo did a better job on that. Where yeah, this is getting abstract, but it's kind of cool. Like it has that grounding in the whole palace motif, and you could see some sort of Mad King making this overly elaborate, endless hallways and banquets and chambers and stuff like that. And so it kind of worked with that. So I have no idea what to call it, because it's not just that it's abstract. It's that it's abstract in a way that I don't connect it. It doesn't have like the grounding in reality to me, and I don't find it particularly pleasing with the aesthetic. So, yeah, actually there was another game I'm considering. Yeah, a modern game I'm considering doing a game dungeon on that solves that problem. Maybe I'll do that later on. My home does not have a fungus problem that I'm aware of. This one's good. It gets blasted by sun. Do you currently play multiplayer? Okay, looks like this is a non-English speaker. Do you currently play a multiplayer game? If so, can you name them? How does games that are not on Steam, such as Riot Games and Garena, to be able made offline? The same as they would if they were on Steam. In fact, if anything, Steam might delay the full process. Steam might shift some liability from the publisher onto the Valve. But if they don't have that, they're independent publishers, then they just need to have an end-of-life plan. I mean, that might be even easier if they don't have to go through Steam. But for multiplayer games, yes, if I can name them, I've made a list of. I'm not playing many like true multiplayer games lately, kind of for two reasons. Three. One, I hate the concept of having the games destroyed, so I usually only go for the ones I really, really, really want to try. And because that feeling still bothers me, even for the ones I really want to try. But it's like I'm hoping the experience kind of outweighs that a bit. But it bothers me knowing any game is going to get destroyed. And a lot of multiplayer games are like that nowadays. The second is, with multiplayer, I find my absolute favorite experiences in games tend to be these sort of like blow your mind kind of climaxes in a lot of games. With the stories of the gameplay. And what I find with multiplayer is they can be absolutely a ton of fun. But you start seeing the same patterns emerge, have an idea of how it's going to go. And what I'm looking at is, okay, all this time I'm spending playing the same multiplayer game that I do like, and I would play it again, is time I could be playing a brand new game that I've never encountered before. And maybe that new game has something really cool I'm missing out on because I'm playing this match again for like the 100th time. And even though I'm still having fun, it's like part of me really wants to kind of see what's behind that other door. So my strategy is to go through all these games that I want to catch up on, and if I get caught up on them, then I'll decide what's better, to replay, what I want to replay or return to or shift to multiplayer. So that was kind of the other aspect of it. And then the third was cheaters really can kind of ruin multiplayer, and that's always a risk with many of them. So it's, you never know. Yeah. Okay, I think this is and the games that I've played. Okay, multiplayer, I mean, I've played more, okay, well, assuming more recent ones, it sounds like you wanted. Vermintide 2, Destiny 2, played The Division. Well, I guess the last ones I played, I was like, okay, well, one, I've just started, and I'm having mixed feelings because I really like the setting, but man, the gameplay is very, very vanilla, and it's not winning me over, is New World. I got that during a sale. I was waiting until I was done with other stuff to try it. And like, I don't know, I'm conflicted. If I can get a hammer that can like 1 or 2 shot enemies, maybe I can keep going. I'll see. But for ones that are like pure multiplayer, or my focus was purely multiplayer, the ones those are older. Those are more, Zombie Panic Source, Fortress Forever, Dirty Bomb,
I was in PlanetSide 2. Those are all examples of that. Ones I'm interested in, but the price is keeping me away, is Hunt Showdown, Dark Tide, Helldivers 2. Those are like multiplayer ones. I'm definitely interested. Maybe Battlefield 2042, or is it 2042? I forget the year. I kind of like the aesthetic they have going on in that one, but yeah, that's what I can think of offhand, and there might have been some others, but let's see. Okay, last question, then I'll start taking live questions. Yeah, you can do that at Ross Broadcast, and I'll get to them. They're saying, why has Game Dungeon become so cynical, serious? Well, it never stopped being cynical, but I did not mean for it to be as serious as like the last one did or some of the other couple of. That's just, it kind of got out of control, and I'm going to try and course correct. Like I can't think of any plans I have for keeping things serious. And in fact, I almost consider it a minor failure when I do stumble into that. So that's just like, you know, when the car veers, where you're spacing out and the car veers off to the safety strip, it's like, it wakes you up. Yeah, that's kind of where I feel about how serious it got. I don't want them getting any more serious than what I got with Culpa Innata. So, in fact, doing this campaign kind of ensures I'm very unlikely to even bring up dead games again in Game Dungeon, because what's the point? I've already covered it. I've done everything I can. There's no point talking about it if I don't feel like I can do anything more on it. So, okay, I'll check the questions. If a multiplayer game or MMO would release their game as single player with different price tag, what would your thoughts on that be? Okay. Oh shoot, did I lose the spot? Oh shoot, oh man, I lost my spot. Okay, I'll catch up. Hey, did you delete your live stream from Twitch? I did it on purpose. It might have stalled out, but if you're looking for an old live stream of me, it's on YouTube. Go to accursefarms.com, or maybe check the description. There might be a playlist on the YouTube channel itself. It's like the video chats with fans. What I do is I make them unlisted after every month, so it's not to clutter up the channel. But they're all still there. Yeah, there's like a playlist I try to add all of them towards, I think on the YouTube channel. If it's not there, it's for sure on the main website, so you can dig it up again. But for Twitch, I have no idea. They might just delete it on their own, so. What about okay, yeah, we kind of covered that. What about expansions to pay once games? Okay, so if there was single player with different price tag, what would your thoughts on that be? Yeah, they did that with Fear, I believe, where they released the free version that was multiplayer only. Recently found that an indie MMO that used to be subscription. Yeah, I think I heard about that one. I forgot the name. I added it to my list. It looked like it had good art design. Made me curious about it. I'm all for that. I think that probably would have taken some of the wind out of the sail. Honestly, if they had been doing that since like the mid-2000s, this campaign might not have ever happened. Not because I still wouldn't be sympathetic towards it, but it just would have led to less outright death. And because you would still have kind of a mutated version of that still playable. And that's kind of what happened to me with a lot of multiplayer games like the mid-2000s, where it's like, okay, the multiplayer's gone, but not a lot of people were playing it anyway, and the single player's still alive. So, okay, I guess I can look the other way on that. But that's not what happened, and we went the complete opposite direction, and they're merging single player with multiplayer. So if you want to play the single player campaign, that's going to be bricked for multiple games. So it's almost kind of moot point. So we have to cover everything now anyway. Have you heard about Open Goal? Project that decompiled the code of Jack and Dexter games and recompiled it to be natively playable on PC. I guess, I thought they had I might be mixing up I might be thinking of like Ratchet and Clank. Okay, I haven't played either, so I'm mixing up
Ratchet and Clank with Jack and Dexter. And I think one of them did have a PC release, but maybe not this. The first game is fully functional, has added functionality like ultra wide resolution and subtitle. I think that's awesome, but I also think I have two thoughts on that. One, that's awesome, and I love it when fans do stuff like that. And two, I also think it's so wasteful to just not have the parent company throw the community a bone on that. Even if it was monetized, like they could have a license and like, okay, here's the source code, but if you release this, it has to be on our terms, and we have to ensure that they'll be buying a legitimate copy of the game, So like kind of like work with, was it Sony that does? I forget. Sorry, I don't know much about this series. But yeah, so it's so wasteful. What we're doing might help some with that, because it's not that they'll necessarily be volunteering more, but if they're forced to have the end of life plan anyway, maybe and let's say, yeah, that's another thing that wasn't totally clear. I think a lot of the initiative might accept this actually, is instead of having an end of life plan, we have an end of life repair plan. So they're not required to have the game work, but they are required to have a repair version. And it could be some studios just say, you know what, we're done with this, we don't care, here's the source code, whatever. And if you have that, then that can make what you're talking about happen in the course of like a few days as opposed to years, so if knowledgeable fans have access to the code. How do you decide to end a Freeman's Mind episode? Why do you not make them longer? I don't know. I just see them as like shorter bites and just try to go for like what feels like good stopping off points. It's a very kind of intuitive thing. I have not seen Ultraman Cosmos 2. Ultraman uses his partner as a boomerang. All right. Are games that use the anime art style but keep the anime style storytelling to a bare minimum, have solid gameplay, still a turnoff to you? A little bit, but not as much. It's more about the melodrama and the unrealistic human behavior, or at least as I interpret it. Maybe it works in Japanese culture, but just doesn't land. A lot of things don't land in from all my life experiences in Western culture, and that sort of like rips me out of the experience. It's not necessarily the art style in itself, but like I forgot I feel like it exists, but I forgot an example of it. If it's just an anime art style, but it feels like completely like real people talking, and like doesn't have these kinds of exaggerations, yeah, that's all right, Let's see. Will you change your mind and pick a different door if the host opens up a door with nothing behind it? Yeah, I heard about that. Well, you're missing some details. The context. There's like a game show where you have 3 doors and one of them has a prize. And then you pick a door, and then the host reveals one of what's behind one of the doors. I think that they showed like one that's empty. And your choice is to pick the new door or stick with the door you have. And you would think it's a 50-50 chance. But if you look at the math, the odds are you picked the wrong door because you had a 1 out of 3 chance when you made your selection. So on average, you're going to have a better chance just by switching your pick. But it's not the most intuitive thing. Yeah. Okay. So, okay, I think I answered these. You ever consider playing a game on stream? Yeah, I've done it before. I've just been so busy. I mean, If I ever get free time again, it feels like I really hope like a week from now my brain's in like a totally different place. Do you still plan to do interviews or conversations non-campaign related? Yeah, I can, but I might want to. I mean, I want to pitch it then, but I'm but like this. I'm not trying to reach. I guess I'm not going to try to reach out to everybody to do that. And I don't think I really have in the past. See, the only reason I've even reached out to people to try to get attention on this or to try to get action done on the issue. That's not something I really enjoy doing or trying, or I don't think I ever, I mean, maybe there's a weird exception I can remember, but I don't think I've ever tried to do that with anybody prior to the game campaign. It's just that I saw that, well, this was going to help the campaign, so that's something I should probably do. I mean, I've had invitations, but I'm not really seeking maximum attention on myself. So it doesn't really do anything for me. I mean, maybe like the first couple interviews I had, it was more exciting, but it's just now it's more of like a duty thing I'm looking at. Culpa Innata, there was a line about 2 puzzles that can't be completed in widescreen. Is there an interesting story why you didn't mention the second puzzle in the final video? Yeah, I'm not sure if it was. Like the other one was in like the gas chamber. Yeah, not the hostile kind, just the smoke room. The smoke room. That one might be one where you have to go back to, but I think that one might be. It looks like it's impossible, but maybe it's technically possible. So I'm not sure, so I left it out. What's the best looking sword in a game you've ever seen? Ooh, oh man, guys, give me suggestions. That might be a good one to end this on. That's an awesome question. I mean, it's kind of cartoonish, but I mean, the game gave it more context with, was it Frostmourne from Warcraft 3? But maybe there's some better ones. I think there could be some better ones out there. Like, yeah, give me some suggestions. Like, best looking sword in a game. Have you played Professor Layton games yet? No, not yet. I'm not really in a rush for them because I'm less. See, even though it's probably very similar gameplay as Puzzle Agent, I'm less interested in the theme because Puzzle Agent has all this surreal humor to it that I like. Let's see. A few years ago, I emailed you about the improvements I made to AVI Synth motion vector script you used for Freeman's Maya, but I never heard back. Yeah, okay, I might be mixing things up. I think if you're one of thinking of, they made it multi-threaded, and what, I might be mixing things up. But if it's what I think of, it made it less stable. So it was like the single-threaded one always worked, and then the multi-threaded one usually worked, but then sometimes it would crash. And I preferred the stability. But maybe it was stable, and I just lost that during maybe when I moved to Windows 10. I might have forgotten to back that up. I'm not sure, but yeah, I really value stability. So. Yeah, but then I think there was another one where they made it more like, was it Source 2 demo style, where it has sampling, but they never jumped ahead with the motion vectors. And that one, you could get higher quality technically, but it takes way more resources to do. Whereas the script I have just sort of makes the jump to infinity, whereas the other one just approaches infinity but never gets there. Okay, somebody's saying Final Fantasy VII. Yeah, well, that one's pretty over the top. Well, you know the one. Okay, you mentioned Final Fantasy. That water sword in Final Fantasy X looked pretty cool. However, that sword also looks extremely similar to the water sword in Prince of Persia: Warrior Within. That was another really cool looking. Path of Exile has, was it some Void Blade? I forget the name of it. That looks pretty awesome. It has like this celestial thing going on. Energy Sword and Halo 2 always look kind of tacky to me. Okay, so they're saying the Time Dagger. Well, that's a dagger, though. I don't remember the Time Dagger being that amazing. I remember the Water Sword, but I think we can do better. I think we can do better, like stuff that's like really out there. Oops, I paused the chat. Okay, somebody's saying Keyblade. That one, I guess that one depends on your taste. That one's kind of like pretty corny, but you know. Oblivion Keyblade. I don't even know that one. Well, like I think there doesn't like I get them mixed up. Like doesn't Tekken or Soul Calibur have like this sword that looks like it's alive or something like that? I haven't played either of those series. You see, somebody's saying Soul Reaver and Blood Reaver, but let's see, which one's Blood Reaver? Is that just the same without the boost? I forget. Soul Reaver looks partially cool, part corny, is what I think, with the Chris Blade sword. Which one's Blood Reaver? Yeah, Blood Reaver is just... Blood Reaver is just Soul Reaver that hasn't been upgraded, if I remember right. I mean, it's cool but corny, you know. We can do better than that. Okay. Okay, okay, the water sword of Final Fantasy X is called the Brotherhood. Yeah, that one looks cool. And Prince of Persia has their own version, Warrior Within. It's very similar. Okay, somebody's saying there are hundreds of Keyblade designs. I'm thinking of the Keyblade from Kingdom Hearts where it's like this giant key. So maybe I'm mixing things up. Okay. Kain is the Blood Reaver. No, Kain starts with the Blood Reaver and it becomes the Soul Reaver, even in Blood Omen 1, if I remember correctly. Yeah, again, we have some tie back. There's a lot of to Blood Omen 1. Okay, somebody's saying Soul Edge from Soul Calibur. Let's take a look at that. Is that what I'm thinking of? Yeah, that is what I'm thinking of. Yeah, that one's up there. The Soul Edge. That looks pretty rad. I bet if we had the right crowd in here, we can do even better. Because I bet there's these kind of like a little off the beaten path fantasy games that just could run circles around some of these. So, all right, I think that's a good place to end it. You can think about what the coolest swords you've ever seen are. I think that's a great place to end this. Thanks for showing up. I'll be having a break. I don't know how long. It's going to be a few days for sure. We'll see. I can't, because last time I did something like this, I thought I was going to take at least a week off, but I was kind of rejuvenated after 3 days. So maybe it'll be like that. We'll see. But Game Dungeon will resume. The campaign's winding down on my end. All the most important stuff is launched. So I can finally kind of breathe easier on this, even though I should keep kind of boosting it, you know, just to maximize our odds a little bit. But yeah, back to normal videos is the theme here. That's where I want to take things. Do that for a few months, then start easing back into the movie. That's the plan here. All right, see ya.